fantasies. It would be nice if I at least had one fantasy. That neutrality about to take a terabytes from the American apple pie, better get a slice. It's kinda scary the way that this life is moving on. Marvin's doing backflips inside his grave, what's going on? We have head-on collisions, not seeing another's vision. Maybe that's the reason why some colors fit the description. A lot of relationships need life rafts, sinking ships. I guess you just can't have only one like potato chips. I would love for you to listen with an open heart, but would you really even hear me if it's torn apart? I don't do the things that I used to. I'll be fine even if I lose you. Okay, okay.
Peace and blessings, family. This is your brother Asarim Hotep, and this is the Mbongi super early Sunday after party edition, coming from the Sesh Metanetra channel, hosted by Brother Wujawu and Sister Emiket. And I don't know the nature of the initial conversation. I done fell asleep because I'm, getting old, and that's just what old people do. I woke up, and then I still had my computer on and had a notice that there was a live. I'm like, I know they is not doing a live this late, but sure enough, Brother Wuja was doing a live, and I guess he was addressing a conversation which I have not seen, dealing with Brother Chief X and one of his many rantings. And so I came in kind of late, and so for those of us who were still up and just a few of us wanted to keep the conversation going. So this is exactly what you see here. And excuse the mess. I'm in the middle of packing because I'll be heading back to Philadelphia at the end of this month. So I just got all kinds of stuff all which way in the background if you see it. So with us, we have one community, and then Brother Lionel, who has joined the panel. And before we bring them, I just want to let everyone know that this is an open forum and discussion, and everyone is invited. You do not have to share your do video, because I know it's early in the morning and some of you sisters probably got bonnets on and your hair ain't did and all that other kind of stuff. So it's all good here. But the link is pinned at the if you want to join the panel and give your opinion. And so I'm assuming, I don't know, looking at I'm speaking to our brothers that's on the panel. Were you there since the beginning, or how early in the conversation did y'all come in, and what did you think what was going on?
I had saw like a little bit of it, because like Jawu was trying to the whole thing about the video was he was trying to talk about like is Egyptology a racist discipline. And he was also trying to talk about where the people like Sheikh Anna Diop's and Theophile Obenga, were they wrong with their like consensus. So he was trying to do like a sort of compare and contrast in the study of Egypt.
I see. So it looks like one, it's the same old type of questions, and then two, it's the kinds of questions that looks like it's taken out of context. Like, we got to remember that Sheikh Anta Diop emerges as a scholar talking about this stuff in the 1950s. He was born in 23, I believe, 1923.
Yep.
So in the 50s is when you really start to see writings of his. And it's ironic because I just downloaded a number of some of his early scholarship in French. And, so a lot of that stuff that we get in English are just separate articles that he kind of compiled together for the English translations. And it became, Civilization of Barbarism and, African origins of civilization and the like. But so we gotta keep that in mind and what's going on at this time. So when at the time that he is born, Williams Flinders Petrie, who takes Egyptology and makes it into a a science, at least in the sense of archaeology, he is making this argument that ancient Egyptian civilization was the result of this white Hamitic race that comes in from Asia and builds up Egypt. So he's coming in on the cusp of that argument, and a lot of people publishing in that time on that particular, just kind of piggybacking on what Petrie, was saying and at the time. So we got to understand that, when Obinga, who's 86 years of age, just to put that in context, like what was going on when they're coming up and emerging, and the types of arguments and what we know now in comparison to what was, there's still major excavations still going on and stuff that hasn't been discovered and written about. But when they came in, it was definitely a very racist field. And matter of fact, I've had 2 or 3 European Egyptologist scholars on my program alone who talks about this. Dr. Vanessa Davies, Dr. Rebecca, well, she's not an Egyptologist, she's a classicist dealing with Egypt. I forgot her, Rebecca. It starts with an F for last name. I'll remember it. Her and Dr. Ashton. How to forget her name that fast? It's early in the morning, so y'all just gotta bear with me because I'm still waking up and I'm in my free Target shirt. So if you see the little Target dog, that's what I slept in. But it's like Ashton. It's like Allie. What is her name? Dr. Ashton, Egyptologist. I gotta get these names.
Sorry.
Sally Ann. I knew it was an N in there. Sally Ann Ashton. And so, she when she came on the program, she talked about how inherently racist and sexist the field was. So much so that she decided to leave Egyptology, go back to school and get a second PhD in child development, something, I forgot what it was, but she just went into a totally different field because of the blatant racism, and this is recent in our recent history, like in the past, decade or so that she did this. So we got to keep that in context when we having this conversation. But I'm sorry, you was about to say or ask something.
Yeah, I was about to say something real quick. And it concerns the field of Egyptology as well.
Okay.
A couple of weeks ago, I had the pleasure, and I put this on my Facebook, and I sent it to both of your Facebook accounts.
Okay.
I had the pleasure of doing a kind of joint interview with Robin Walker and
Yeah.
Dana Reynolds Marnish. You know who she is, right?
Yeah, I know who she is.
She wrote like extensively on the Moors, and like she talks about how like she knows Zahi Hawass personally,
Hmm.
and she talked about how she would like go into a lot of these Egyptology forums in I think Philadelphia back in the day, and she
Hmm.
told me about how like Eurocentric, a lot of the Egyptologists were back in that time. I think during the 80s or 90s. So that's real,
Recent.
prevalent.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it's crazy. Like people really don't know the extent until you actually get involved and, for example, try to write articles or present at conferences. And on one hand, you can understand, like, they just don't want, you don't want any and everybody who has an opinion to be able to come and legitimize themselves at an academic conference. So like what they're trying to do is avoid the so-called pyramidologist and just people who were just kind of all the way left. But at the same time, you get into a conservative bubble, and anything that challenges orthodoxy, they summarily reject it without examining the evidence for. And so you got to find all these creative ways and things to get the message out there. And I've had a whole show on, for example, Dr. Mubai Binge Balolo, who his abstract was rejected for an international conference on ancient Egyptian, asking the question, is ancient Egyptian a Bantu language? And he wasn't even declaring anything. He just asked the question.
Ooh.
Ancient Egyptian a Bantu language. The fact that one was, had the audacity to ask such a question, they just summarily dismiss it. But they always avoid a confrontation. Like like scholars have debates all the time. Like that is just part of the culture of scholarship. You can go to any college campus throughout the year, and in some science department and some sociology department, two scholars who have opposing views, two or more scholars that have opposing views, will have that conversation publicly. But they avoid African scholars.
They do.
They'll know that, they are confronted with those things that we, like the kinds of stuff talk about on this channel and others, that forces you to reevaluate the current consensus and opinions. It really isn't consensus. It's really the popular opinions of Egyptologists in this time, and they just don't want to do that. They're comfortable in where they're at, and
Right.
they don't want to be pushed intellectually. Let me see what she's saying. The conversation today was done to open the panel to people who were asking Bujaru questions on Chief X's YouTube chat. And none showed up except Brother Aku Kamanti. We'll go over Chief X mess later on today. Indeed. All right, I see. Let me see. It says, sorry, what is the topic of the night? There was no real specific topic. So I don't know if you are just coming in or if I'm just kind of catching this late, but this is just an after party open discussion about I'm assuming Chief X's recent rants on his page, which caused Wujawu to go live at like 3 a.m. And so we're just doing an open mic, open forum after party. So there's really no topic. It's just whatever y'all want to talk about. Since we just all up and ain't got ish to do at the moment, we might as well have a conversation. So one community, are you still there?
I'm here, brother. Yeah, I'm here. That's all.
So what was were you able to catch the
conversation? I caught it. I caught it like probably midway through. By the time when I got in there, Aku was asking his questions and he was going. So Aku was really just asking. That's like when you came in, it was a lot of that going on. I'd be really trying to sit back and listen and learn too. I know things as well, but I'd be trying to learn, especially from people that do research. I think that just furthers my studies and speeds up my process of learning things. So that's where I'd be at with it. Right now, I'm in the UK. Like I said, I'm in the UK right now. I'm from New York. And I'm just here to build, and I'm here to listen and learn. If I have a question, I'm going to ask it. If not, I'm going to listen and I'm going to learn.
Indeed. All right. What is this? It says, man, I saw the Facebook post of Asar going back and forth with one of the racist Arabs. These dudes are nuts. Asar is a gentleman, so he had to protect his academic credential. To me, I'm self-made. I don't have to be nice with these fake ass Egyptian animals. Man, I got I'm just now coming off of out of Facebook jail for going back and forth with those racist Arabs. And so what they'll do is, they'll try to flood your page and say all kinds of craziness. But then when you come back with the real information, then they start reporting your post saying that it's hate.
Photoshopped.
All this other kind of stuff. Like I'm showing just raw images from the tombs themselves. So I went over to Egypt and photoshopped an entire tomb and remade all the drawings to make them look dark black African. Like these cats just be everywhere. So and I think I've gotten like 3 strikes already because of them. So what I ended up doing was just blocking everybody from Egypt.
Yep.
So if you go to my page, you don't see a flood of them. That's because I blocked the entire country. I did Saudi Arabia, and I'm gonna do some others. Anybody with Arabic letters, I'm just blocking them. I ain't got time. I want the smoke, but y'all trying to get my page shut down and falsely flagging, me whooping your ass with this information as a hate crime. And so that's exactly what is going on and what they're doing. So if you ain't seen me posting in about a week, that's cause I was in Facebook jail dealing with these racist Arabs. And and that's one of the reasons why matter of fact, let me, because I got to give some updated information. So some of y'all already know, but just in case you didn't, let me. I'm sorry, I gotta.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Can I add something?
Go ahead.
Okay, this is the thing that honestly baffles me about the craft of history, like period, right? Is when okay, let me give an example. We all know that Diodorus Siculus says that Egyptian culture came from the south, and they were the Egyptians were originally colonists, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they had they had got all their stuff from the Ethiopians, meaning the people from the Sudan. What's funny to me is that academia will prop up the Greeks and Romans as they are the pariahs of math, science, law, astrology, and all that type of stuff, right? But when Diodorus Siculus says that Egyptian civilization came from the south, then they're just going to completely ignore that. That's very funny to me.
Oh, there's more that they completely ignore, and it really just if there's some people, we got to be careful about blanketly stereotyping everyone in the field. Not everyone ignores it, but what happens is even if they do acknowledge it, it is downplayed, or they'll try to wiggle out of it in some fashion. They'll try to discredit Diodorus, like he's wrong over here talking about something totally different, so that makes everything he says questionable, and so they try to insert some doubt so that you don't trust the information regarding Diodorus Siculus or Herodotus or any other person who gives any kind of inclination that the Egyptians are related and or got their culture and customs from the people in the Sudan and the South period. And so before I bring the next panel, I just want to remind folks that we're speaking about what I call them, the Arabized Russian bots. And because these Russian bots are the label that they chose to put into the media for that is responsible for all of these fake news and kind of disrupting the society. Well, these Russian bots speak Arabic and they write in Arabic, and so they were trying to flood the internet with misinformation, and they kind of bullied their way into getting the One Africa Power and Unity Conference canceled for Egypt itself. And so the conference is still going on. However, it is now going to be in Detroit. So you can physically go to the conference, in Detroit if you so do so, or you can, live stream it. You would just have to go to hoppyfilm.com to get your tickets either way. And so now some of the lineup has changed from the original lineup that was supposed to go down in Egypt. And so for various reasons, either for scheduling or, they feel being a part of the conference is now, how should I say, it may cause some other issues, like, for example, like Anthony Browder, because he's doing actual digs in Egypt. He has to deal with the people of antiquities and all this because, he's responsible for that. So given the situation, I understand why he had to opt out. But, there are a few others. It's like they had other things set up and they just couldn't make it. So, some of the original is still there, like Sister Baina Bello, Professor James Smalls, Dr. Leonard Jeffries, Dr. Rosalind Jeffries, Brother Jabari Osazi, and Infodishi Jehudi Mess, and Dr. Theophilo Benga is going to be there, and he was on the original roster as well. And so now, Dr. Wade Nobles and his wife, Dr. Vera Nobles, Dr. Solange Ashby, and Brother Anthony Browder were supposed to be, on the original roster, but they, for one reason or another, could not make this conference with a new date. So, it has now they have been replaced with Dr. Chike Okua, Dr. Malefe Kitiasanti, and Dr. Susan Tata, if I'm saying that correctly, and Dr. Milana Karenga. So it's going to be a very powerful conference. So it's going to be still a 2-day conference, Saturday, April the 30th, and then Sunday, May the 1st at the Doubletree Hotel, 525 West Lafayette Boulevard, Detroit, Michigan. When I go, I'm trying to see if I can get into Dilla's basement and snatch some Dilla beats so I can rock and do some battle raps against the Arabized Russian bots on this subject to some Dilla beats. And, we're going to have a good time. So, just hit up the hoppyfilm.com website, for the tickets if you are interested in either going or in if you can't go, catching the live stream from both days. And since we're doing announcements, I'll just re-announce that at the end of the summer, I will be releasing my book, Race and Identity in Ancient Egypt, Volume 1. And so the first one, the first volume is subtitled Towards a Meaning for the Place Name Kemet. So I'll be dealing with my expanded research on the etymology and the meaning of the place name Kemet. And then the second one is going to be an edited work, which I'm going to have other scholars contributing on the conversation on the race and identity of the ancient Egyptians. And then in the third volume, I'm just citing nothing but primary sources in regards to anything dealing with, ethnic identity. So it's going to be raw hieroglyphs, raw Greek, all of that in there at once. So with that said, so y'all just keep an eye out for that. I will let y'all know when, you can either pre-order or purchase your copy, and we're going to make it happen. So we got 2 additional panel members. First came in Brother Magi, and then we got our good brother, the Jet M. Unk. And so welcome to the early morning edition of quote unquote after party. And what's on your minds?
Peace. What's up? Peace to the panel, everybody out here. Thanks for going live after Ujahu's show. You know, I tuned it. Well, I mean, I ain't saying I started it, but yesterday I got a whim to go live and just to put my final words towards Chief X theories and to see would he address some of the things he had not addressed specifically and coincidentally. It was the Diodorus Siculus post or whatever his name is. It was his quotes from book 3 about Egyptians. And I noticed how when I first put up that quote, he only addressed what he called a Photoshop from Richard Leps's work. And he never addressed the quote. And so we always let people do this. It's just like we kids looking at a coloring book and we don't want to read the one little sentence up under the picture in the coloring book at the bottom. We just want to look at the pictures and ignore everything else. And he tried to do that again, but when I got out of that stream, I think I tapped out for a minute, stepped away. Chief X went live last night. Ujahu. Well, so just while I was waiting on you to go live, I started trying to tune in to Chief X's live from last night, just briefly, and oh my God, dude, I got to see what y'all was saying. In the first few minutes, he was dancing with a sword like he was in Rwanda, hiding out in some little shanty shack or some shit. And then he started putting the sword to his neck. And I was like, man, he probably so high, he gonna forget and cut his neck real quick. So I started feeling for the brother. But I mean, I've been where he was at. He was just feeling good and whatever. But it was like frightening from a scholastic standpoint to say that you want to represent yourself as someone who we should refer to for information, and then to see you carry on as if you're at a campfire ayahuasca ceremony or some shit is just crazy. And so I just wanted to put my little 2 cents in, but I'm here for the whole panel.
I appreciate it. I'm going to have to go back. I didn't see it, so I just woke up. And, you know, I just happened to have my computer on and just checked my notices and I saw that there was a live. I'm like, wait a minute. And I didn't even know that today was the day you set your clocks forward. You know.
Oh, for real? So what time is it now? Because I'm waiting for my local store to open. What time is it?
Well, it's 8:04 Eastern time.
It used to be 7:04?
Right now, I guess, yeah, it would be 7:04 Eastern time. I know you in Cali, so
shit. It's what my phone saying. I don't know. I'm trying to get up, give me some good breakfast, but anyway.
Let's see.
It's 7:04 where I'm at.
Yeah, you must be central then. So yeah. What I think from the East Coast, you 3 hours behind, so it'd be 4. I mean, it would be
5. Huh?
Yeah, it'll be 5.
Oh, but I mean, and just to speak to her, Akuku, we just poke fun at each other. But the brother was, I mean, some of his standpoint is intentionally disruptive, and it seems like it's in order for us to impede progress in the direction we're going. Like it's like a kid in the class who wants to keep asking questions so they don't have to get to the test. You know what I'm saying? And that's what I get from Aku. Like, oh, you just about to keep on disrupting progress so we never get to the point to reveal that you just wrong. You know, and they can be genuine in what they believe about. I mean, you know, I don't think they're genuine. I think it's completely disingenuous. I think it's along the line of TJ Sotomayor just trying to get some shock value views up out of the conscious community by going against everything all of your peers is saying. I think some people charted that out as their plan for views. Really, like, I'm just gonna go against everybody. I don't care how dumb I sound, I'm gonna get some views. You know what I'm saying? And I think Brother Aku contributes to that, and I think Chief X is the leader of that. Like, I don't care, I just want some views. And he even expressed this sentiment in getting views over putting out information by saying that he's not a YouTuber anymore the other day because his view grow rate wasn't growing fast enough. So that lets me know that you're not here for the reasons that we're here. We're here at 5 a.m. with 32 people. We're not really tripping off of what you're tripping off. You know what I'm saying? You're trying to grow as some type of YouTuber in the conscious community, and you want as many views as Sotnetter. We're just simply here as a beacon of the truth, no matter how many people are listening. And I think that's the difference.
Like, he misunderstood the Sotnetter formula. See, Sotnetter had built his platform, you know, several ways. One, you know, is natural personality of the people, of course, of Sotnetter himself. But, you know, when he was out on the corner, you know, selling his DVDs and T-shirts and all this other kind of stuff, you know, he's interviewing just the people just every day, like it's just New York culture and opinions and folks that just happen to be passing by going to get some ice cream or something, and you know, find themselves on a Sotnetter video. So then there's that, and then there's the debates. And because of a lot of the controversy and the excitement behind some of the debates, you know, a lot of people try to imitate his formula, but you know, you're not even in the environment for which that kind of formula would thrive. You know, you don't have the personality, you don't have the history with the people and the like. And so they now you have to go bigger and more raunchier and just crazier, and you know, it's not self-sustaining in the long run. And so hold on, I want to address this before I scroll back down. It says, so Brother Sar, the reason the scholars don't accept your theory is because of racism and sexism. What my theory is, I don't know. You have to be specific. And no, that's not what I'm saying, you know, because there are scholars who accept exactly what these African scholars, let me just say, there are some European scholars that accept exactly what these African scholars are saying. But the people who make the most noise are the blatant, and it's not really, see, we got to understand, like, the scholars, they're going to try to do their racism more subtly in the writing, right? And you know, they're over endowed chairs, so they control certain conferences and accesses. They're over editorial boards for certain types of journals, et cetera, et cetera. And so remember, they have a 100-year head start, you know, 100+ year head start on this than a lot of African people, because of the social issues that we were dealing with first, before we would, you know, even had the leisure to get involved in these different things. But that's neither here nor there. And so, but what happens is it's the internet trolls, the people who don't do serious scholarship at all, who have all the time in the world to make YouTube videos, to spam and make blog websites, who are the loudest and like to make the most noise, but don't have the grounding, the academic grounding, to make intelligent arguments. And there are some that are just rare in the academics field, like Zahi Hawass, who will just come out and blatantly say that ancient Egypt had nothing to do with Black Africans or Africans or Africa, because he don't believe Egypt's in Africa. So he says that it has nothing to do with Africa at all. You know, and he'll say this out loud, but he won't take no debate. He won't have his, because, you know, at one point he is the head of the antiquities. So everybody got to go through Hawass if you want to do a dig, if you want to do a tour, all of this. So he using his power in Egypt And a lot of people just kind of skip around that and kiss his ass and all of this, but they have a very unsavory opinions of him personally. And it just got to a point where it's so bad that just the entire world and community rebelled against him, and that's why he got kicked out of the position, and there's somebody else there now, because he was slowing up, just like Brother Magi, the analogy that he gave, his antics were so out there that he was slowing the progress of Egyptology on all fronts. And when you're messing up the money, the people, the governments and things will react, because without the European, besides the tourism itself, the tourism is because of the European interests and digs, and them being able to go in and find these findings and putting them in museums and stuff like that. This is one of the major reasons why there is even a tourist economy there in the first place. And so, but no, like in terms of theory, it's some of it is racism, and then some of them is just they're uninformed. Like, they don't know about African scholars, they don't know about linguistics, and they're just not skilled in other fields of knowledge to even be able to come to an intelligent conclusion about certain things. So when you're talking about Egyptology is really just archaeology and philology. Rarely is anyone equipped in linguistics, in anthropology. They don't know any history about Africa in general, any of the other sciences in terms of, biology, be able to deal with DNA. They don't even do statistics, in any measurable form in, well, I don't know about now, but, at some point, at one point, they didn't have any real serious statistical analysis in any of the Egyptological studies. Because it was just mainly philology. So it was along there with biblical studies, where they just anything goes in these areas. But brother the Jed, you there?
Yes, I'm here. Can y'all hear me?
Yeah, okay, hear you.
All right. Peace to everybody. Peace to my brother Asar.
Yeah,
how's everybody feeling?
I'm good. I'm up, and was gonna do some packing, but now I'm doing some rapping, I guess, if that makes some sense. But but yeah. So were you able to catch any of it, or if you have an opinion about anything else you want to talk about if you didn't catch the show?
Yeah, like you, I was up. I get up pretty early. Like, I'm up around 4 o'clock. I slept in a little bit this morning, so I slept till like 5:15. And then that's when everything was winding down. So I was like, man, so I missed all of it, right? So I caught the tail end when you guys were kind of going over the stuff about the rematch on the walls and on the tomb and all of that. But yeah, just me personally, I'm not on social media a lot. I don't do a lot of that. But so I think a lot of the stuff that goes on, like on YouTube and stuff, like, I just think it's weird, just in general. A lot of crazy stuff goes on. So I'm kind of out to lunch on all of that, but I'm familiar with the argument just from like other stuff I've seen, and just the arguments that are being made. And it's the kind of thing that even if I agreed with these people, I would tell them these are really bad arguments, right? Because you can make a good argument and be wrong, just like you can be right and make a bad one, And so it's the lack of like method that does it for me, so it's really hard for me to listen to that kind of stuff. I mean, because like you said, when you're on YouTube for 3 and 4 hours a day, like, I have stuff to do, like I'm working on pronoun sheets for my students, here, for my Meta Netra students and stuff. And like, I get up early in the morning and do that stuff and read, and I don't have time to just sit and listen to a video of lunacy for 4 hours,
That's what pseudos be banking on. All the real people ain't got time. You know, I don't go into work until Thursday, so I'm gonna spend 12 hours going over everything and nothing at the same time.
Right.
But yeah, appreciate it. And Dr. Duarte, you know, just a long story short, you know, to use Mary J. Blige's coined term, there was just a lot of hateration going on in these internet streets, and allegedly, and I can't confirm this, but you know, there was some physical threats. So what, I might as well just tell the story then. So what ended up happening is, of course, we were to have this conference in Egypt, the One Africa, you know, Power and Unity Conference, right? And this was supposed to happen in Aswan on the final days of the trip in Egypt, you know, which ended on the 28th of February. And so what ended up happening around the last, you know, 2 weeks going up to before the conference started, a whole bunch of Arabized, you know, we really can't even assume that they were really even Egyptians, because what was happening was they were creating a lot of fake Twitter and YouTube accounts and going to the people whose they're the social media pages of the people who were on the flyer for the conference, and trying to make allegations that y'all trying to steal our history and we won't let this happen. And they created a change.org you know, petition. And so it was a whole bunch of noise online that was being made. But, you know, talking to, you know, our contacts on the ground in Egypt, they don't know what's going on. And so, you know, there was a lot of confusion, and allegedly, you know, I think it started off with Dr. Solange Ashby and then Anthony Browder. And I don't think Dr. Wade Nobles got, you know, much of it, but, you know, he was going off of what Anthony Browder was saying. And Anthony Browder was like, you know, it's some, you know, people are making like terrorist threats, and they're threatening to shut down my my excavations that I've been working on for 14 years, you know, with the Karakamoon, you know, 25th dynasty tomb and reconstruction. And I'm not too sure exactly what the extent was in terms of Dr. Solange Ashby. What they were doing was pulling up old, you know, tweets and posts of, you know, support, like with Dr. Solange Ashby, because she was supporting the Nubians on the ground. You know, they was attacking her because of that. And then Anthony Browder, you know, he, you know, that these aren't the real Egyptians that are there now, and da da da. So they're taking that, using those clips, and making the case that they're trying to say that we're not the Egyptians, and all this other kind of stuff, and you know, just all kinds of craziness. A few of them tried to come on my page, and you know, I'm unlike the elders. I was born into this. So, you know, the internet beefs and things we kind of live for. So we going, they not going as hard on my page as they were on the others, because I was answering them. They were trying to shut their pages down and hide and all this other kind of stuff, because they're taking the stuff seriously. But, you know, and so I think one of them made a fake flyer and said that the event was canceled. And then Anthony Browder got it, and then he started sharing it that it was canceled, but it wasn't canceled from Brother Taki, the person who was putting on the tour. It wasn't canceled And so like this caused some more confusion, and and then at last minute, given the potential safety concerns, and in my opinion, like the people who were going on the tour, they had nothing to worry about, because they weren't on the flyer. Nobody knew they were coming. But we had private meetings with everybody that was going to go, and people getting scared because Dr. Wade Nobles, and I don't want nobody, and he's coming with his wife. So his wife is in a wheelchair, and it's understandable. If there's any kind of threat, any potential threat, then you have to take that seriously. But then there was a lot of us, it's like, F them dudes, we going, and we going to continue and do what we do. So that's what ended up happening. And so the event was canceled first. So Brother Taki at last minute canceled the event, but the tour was still going to go on. But then later on, he decided to reschedule the tour. So the tour has been rescheduled, and the conference has been rescheduled. We're not telling anybody when the tour is happening. It will happen sometime this year, and you'll just know when we come back. But the conference is going to be on the April the 30th and May, or April the 30th, 31st, one of them, and May the 1st, that Saturday and Sunday in Detroit. So that in a nutshell, basically Arabize Russian bots hating on African scholars, but will not confront us on a scholarly level to make their arguments publicly. They create fake accounts, and they think that like we don't have this homework, and that we were just some Rudy Poots coming and making some noise, but certain elders, they just come from a different school. They're not about that, and I understand. But us, Amara Squad, Mossy, Magi, we with the ish. So that's something that we live for. But so that's it in a nutshell, if that makes sense, Brother Odara. So
Yes, sir.
all righty.
I just sent you the interview I did with Robin and Dana again. Check your messenger.
All righty. Yeah. I ain't been on Facebook so long because of my damn exile. Let me see. It says that you sent a message, but it was unsent.
Okay, let me do it again.
All righty, but I'll check it out when I have time. The interview.
Okay. It's about like 3 hours and 8 minutes, but I just want to, show that to you because I just want your opinion.
All right, no problem. When I get some time, I'll go through it. And he said, this is an intellectual awakening bait. So, people got to understand, like, it's serious. And this is why we advocate for proper research methods and being able to support your arguments for stuff like this, because they think that we're just making stuff up. And a lot of these people who have these oppositions aren't really well versed in the script, the history, science, or research methods at all. And we get these these people who are loud and wrong, like Chief X, and matter of fact, these Arabized Russian bots were naming Chief X or giving his name, like, and tagging him. So they're in cahoots in conversation with him. So you can, if you understand the lunacy coming from Chief X, then you can see what was going on with the other group. So they're in cahoots with that, but they've stopped nothing, just postponed. And so and actually made the conference stronger in a sense, with some of the people that we have coming in replacement. And so let me scroll. Anybody got something to say on the panel?
Dana, when I was talking to Dana Reynolds Marnish, like a couple days ago, you know what she told me? And I think this should be the mentality for everybody. Dana told me, and you can watch this in the interview, that, she said basically, if you're not necessarily a scholar, like you pretty much, don't exist for real. Like, why am I, taking you seriously? Because there's a lot of people who are not well versed, like you said, in like, historical methods, etc. And they generally don't know what they're talking about. So I don't think we should give people like any mind for real, sometimes.
But that's just the thing. The and she's a little older, and she just comes from that school. Like they didn't grow up with technology and being on the internet like my generation and younger, right?
Right.
And so they are of the opinion that just because they're in academia, they don't have to answer and address these things that are happening in social media. And the problem, and I understand, like, because you, as a scholar, you don't want to waste your time dealing with, individuals, because that takes away from your scholarship and the offerings that you can bring to the public. Right. If you're just addressing every little Rudy poot. But at the same time, if they don't necessarily have to address an individual, they just have to be more internet savvy and take advantage of social media to answer some of these issues that are brought up, and be able to present that information to the public, to be able to have an alternative voice. Because if all the scholars just ignore the noise, then when younger folks, because we got to remember, just African Americans alone, we're like 40 million people, and not all of us are on this kick about learning about Africa and African people. But every day, more and more of us are waking up and getting interested in Black studies, in Africana studies, and some come by way of ancient Egypt. So they didn't grow up in the era in which I did, where you had to go to the library and open a drawer and go through an index Rolodex to find books and stuff like this, or had the when we finally upgraded and had the Apple computer that was green screen, and you had to turn it on in the back, and had a big B floppy disk, and in the library, they go to their phone, they go straight to YouTube, straight to Google. And if they're looking up information, and the dominant information that is coming up is coming from the Arabized Russian bots, then it's going to be harder for them to filter through the noise and get the exact and correct information, because they're not coming into this from academia. If you are coming like I came through academia, so part of just being a student of Africana studies, you learn where to go to find information, and how to evaluate information, and to assess research methods, and assess the orientation of the author, and you're looking at the bibliography and looking for primary sources and things. The communiversity has no clue about that in general, I'm speaking, whatsoever. So, any and every information that they're getting, they're taking it at face value. And so this is why I take some time to address some of the madness that you find in social media, so that when people are doing their searches, that if I put in some good keywords and things, that hopefully one of my programs or other books and things that I've recommended or interviews will show up in their timeline, and they have access to this information, and it's like, okay, this is different than what I'm seeing over here, and I like the presentation, I like the sources that they're providing, and this is a bit more robust than what's going on over here. And so it's a balance that we have to do. And he says, why don't you bring Arabs for some debate? I've called them all to the debate. And the only ones that want to debate are the people who don't have real pages. They have one friend in 2022, as a Facebook, like that, like no, I'm gonna need you to show your face, because you need to put your reputation on the line when you're making these claims. People need to see you, and they don't want to do that. They want to debate anonymously and just make up all kinds of stuff. So I've even challenged him, won't you find me an Egyptian native Egyptologist who holds your views, and let's have them debate, because you want to debate somebody that has something to lose if they lose. See, if you get a random person who sells insurance, trying to make Egyptological debates, then it's not going to count. You wasted your time. It's not going to count for anything. So if you beat them up, it's like you beating up a skinny homeless person on the street. Like, people in the hood, that don't count. Like who is that? You need to go fight Tyson and whoever, you need to step in the ring with some professionals. And so they don't want to put them out. And the invitation is always open. African scholars have been, since the 70s, open to these debates. And the most famous one, of course, being the Cairo Symposium in 1974. And he's had stories in gas stations in our community and never support our causes, but they boycott us over information. Exactly. Because you got to understand Arab culture and just that whole region. They are not respecters of history and culture. Like, they don't have a reverence for ancestors like Africans do. And because of Islam, Islam tries to erase everybody else's history. And so if the very fact that we are big upping ancient Egypt, its language, culture, its achievements and accomplishments over Islam, is problematic for these people. And so when you got to understand how powerful African American voices are, because when we holler, the world listens, and they understand what that means to have a group of 12 or 14 African American and African scholars coming into Egypt, talking about the relationship, because all we were talking about was the relationship between ancient Egypt and the rest of Africa. They know that we can make those claims. Diop and Obinga was at the first conference, and he's coming back. They not having it. And so you got to understand the political issue that the political and intellectual warfare that we find ourselves in. And so the people on the ground, they have the power. State country, You know, they control the visas. And so, you know, but that doesn't stop us. And so while you can control the narrative there, they're forgetting that we have access to the rest of the world. And so what they should have done, if they weren't cowards like they are, is that they should have organized a debate or at least a discussion with the scholars there on the issue, and they would have had an opportunity on their home turf to prove us wrong. But they don't want that. They can't have that because they understand the tools that we're working with and what that means. And so and you got to understand that there's something else political as well, is that the quote unquote Nubian people who live in Egypt are treated, you know, they're in living in apartheid kind of situation. And so here you come with these African Americans saying that the Ethiopians, you know, they're quoting Diodorus Siculus, that the ancient Egyptian culture, you know, comes from the Ethiopians, from the Sudan and surrounding areas, and that they're the ones who became the ancient Egyptians, and all the customs or the majority of the customs and things come from them. What does that mean? You have all these other people who don't look like the quote unquote Nubians controlling all of the trade and stuff like this over a people who you're oppressing's heritage. So now they have political claims to the monuments. This is messing up the money. When you have a situation like this, it's always going to boil down to the money. We African American, Africana studies, African scholarship messes up the money. And that's what it all boils down to. So they're not going to have, you know, a Theophilo Benga who can read Greek, Arabic, Meta-Neter, Coptic, Hebrew, knows about 8 other African languages, coming there, you know, talking about these connections. They're not going to have an Asar Hotep, a Milana Karanga. We're not having all. No. You messing up the money.
Man.
He says, brother, are you aware that the name Bayankole is Yoruba for build my house for me if it's spelled Bayankole? Well, no, because the Bayankole is a totally different word in Chiluba than that combination in Yoruba. And so Ile is a word for house. And so you can't separate the word Kole in Chiluba. And so the N is a noun, an agent prefix that used to be mu, and Ba is a noun, human noun class plural prefix in Chiluba. Totally separate words. And you got to understand that human beings can only produce so many sounds. And there you are bound to, in any language, find words that sound alike to other words in other languages, unrelated languages. This is why we have the historical comparative method, so that we can distinguish between chance lookalikes versus inherited lexemes from a pre-dialectical parent. And so, you know, but I doubt Bayankole in Yoruba is Bayankole. Totally separate words. Let me see. Advocacy of philosophy is a great name. Anybody else got something to say? I know I was ranting for a bit. I'm just trying to acknowledge and check some of the comments. Let's see.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
it was brilliant that you brought up that whole Arab culture thing, about not revering the ancestors, because I want to bring us to a bit of a modern situation that happened, which is horrible. Did you hear about in 2014, the people of the Veil, and I think they were connected with some Al Qaeda terrorist people, and they went over to Timbuktu and they started blowing up the shrines, the 333 saints that our ancestors used to worship, and they're trying to blow up the statues and totems that our ancestors used to worship. So that made me click about what you said.
Exactly. If it was not a money making scheme in Egypt, them Arabs would have been tore up. They're already covering all my thoughts are jumbled right now, but they would have destroyed all of that stuff a lot earlier.
Yep.
And when the last time that I was in Egypt, you see them scraping the hieroglyphs off of the temple walls in there.
Word.
Like I witnessed it, the dude. So there's an old video of Ashra Kwesi talking about this, but I never thought that when I go that I would actually see them doing it. So they're sitting there scraping, getting rid of the hieroglyphs on some of the monuments and just making it smooth all around. Like, what is the logic of that? They have this is how you know that these people are not connected, at least not mentally, at least not culturally, to the ancient Egyptians, because the ancient Egyptians had a reverence for ancestral things. And they had even this phrase, Saruj Ta, restoring the world. And they would always talk about this Saruj, where they would, if something was in ruins, they would go back and rebuild it to make it better than it was. But building off of the tradition and respecting the tradition, and they saw this as an obligation to keep the memory of their ancestors alive. That's the African way. That's not these people who are there now. And everywhere you find like Islam and Christianity, they try everything in their power to get rid of the memory of the people and the accomplishments and the history and of what they've achieved in that area. So that's why, like, when you see Arabs in Mali and they're destroying the Timbuktu monuments and the not monuments, the
333
architecture and the writings, like all of that stuff is in jeopardy because of Islam. One thing I can appreciate, even with the sickness of white people, that the mental health issues that just come along with their culture. One thing that they do, though, respect is history. And they will steal all your monuments, but preserve them mugs and build temples around it to protect those monuments
in
because
Britain.
they respect history.
You're right.
Like there's something about them that just respects old things and wants to preserve it, at least at minimum, for study. They don't, these Arabs in this area and Arab-minded people, regardless of what their skin color is, because when the Fulani was rampaging across West and Central Africa, they were doing the same thing. So whether they Berbers, whether they are Fulani, whether they are Egyptianized, living Russian bots, or Egyptian Arabized Russian bots in the country now, who have some legitimate ancestry DNA with ancient Egyptians, they think like Arabs. and they get mad when I talk about this. I'm like, dude, you speak Arabic. Your religion is Islam. Y'all have not continued the culture. Y'all have totally abandoned your culture for something else of lesser quality. And the presentation that I'll be doing in Detroit is to make this discussion about how, because I'm flipping the script on them. I'm going to agree. This is my debate challenge for all of these folks. I'm going to agree that Black African people, however we define that, had nothing to do with ancient Egypt. That this was all because you got two types of arguments. You have the argument that these Egyptians were Eurasiatics who came in and built it up, or you have those who make the argument that they're neither black nor white, they're Egyptian. So the Egyptians are their own race. They have their own language. They ain't related to nobody and to nothing, right? Everything in terms of concept, in terms of accomplishment, they just built for themselves right there on the spot. I'm going to agree to all of that. Now, the question comes up, well, if we find these ideas, these concepts, these religious, these familiar kinship terms, these rituals, these burials, if we find this anywhere else outside of Egypt, how do you explain that? Because you just made the argument, and I just agreed that y'all had nothing to do with Africa, and that y'all had no interactions with Africans except through slavery, of course. So this is why, for those of you who are on my social media pages, I did a quasi survey asking you all what are the things that you have in mind when you think of ancient Egypt that is unique to Egypt, that is identifying for Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians I'm speaking of. So what concepts comes to your mind immediately when you're thinking about the ancient Egyptians? And what I'm doing is citing, I'm writing down the most popular ones, and then I'm gonna have that as part of the debate, because I'm just gonna go down the line. Because if ancient Egypt had nothing to do with Africa, then y'all wouldn't have that. None of these concepts would be associated with any other spot in Africa. So if I find them and I can systematically and scientifically demonstrate that this is present in these other places without interactions with ancient Egyptians, we got to snatch that off, those characteristics, those themes, as being ancient Egyptian. That can't be ancient Egyptian, because the ancient Egyptians and their stuff had nothing to do with Africa. So if I find Ma'at outside of ancient Egypt, then that can't be ancient Egyptian. So we're going to take away Ma'at. If we talk about pyramids, that, because if that is uniquely and strictly Egyptian, we shouldn't find it anywhere. I'm going to have to take that off the list. So once I start snatching everything off the list, then what are you left with? If I take away Ra, if I take away Atum, if I take away Aten, if I take away Ma'at as a concept and a deity, if I take away the kinship terms, if I take the very name Kemet away and Tameri, if I take away the leopard skin in the Sim priest, if I take away all of that stuff, crowns, the Book of the Dead, mummification, these are ideas that you associate. If I take away all of that, what are you left with? You know, these are the kinds of things. This is the way that you get them. You agree to their terms and their lunacy. And then you do what we do in mathematics and in logic, and we do what is called a proof by contradiction. So let me see what these comments are saying before I lose it. Let me see. It says, do the current Egyptian school kids learn about their ancient history? Is it part of the school curriculum? Me think not. I don't think so, unless they like go into a special program afterwards. I had, matter of fact, ironically, one of the Babalawos who initiated me into the Ifa tradition, he actually lived and taught mathematics in Egypt for like almost 10 years, I believe. I think it's probably like 10 or more years. And so, he would introduce a lot of the concepts in terms of ancient Egyptian history to his high school and middle school students. But I don't think, if I remember the conversation with him correctly, I could be wrong, I don't think they do. Like, it's not a part of their heritage in terms of studies like that. It says, Seshew for us. Says, is there any evidence that suggests that the ancient Remetch were recreating symbolic representations of the forest through the temples that they built? Yes. And it's also not just the forest, it's the swamps, the delta marshes. But all of that has to deal with forestry type stuff. See, people like, this is an important thing to understand as well about ancient Egypt. Ancient Egypt had to build in stone what did not exist naturally in other places in Africa. Right? So, for example, and I think Dr. Malidoma Some talks about this in a number of his works. So, you know how, like, if maybe because the vast majority of us on this program and listening in the audience are men, we may not necessarily connect to this, but definitely women, Black women at least. When a woman makes a home, one of the things that she will try to do is incorporate a lot of nature and natural feel. So she'll have some plants, even if it's fake, or whatnot. The kind of colors to match, the outside or whatnot. She's trying to bring nature into the home. Right. And just collectively, this is what we do because we no longer live outside in nature. And so, for a lot of you philosophy buffs, if you are familiar with Baudrillard's, Simulacra, Simulacrum, that particular philosophical text that was very inspirational for the Matrix films. Then when the Wachowski brothers were actually brothers, but in that particular text, he talks about how we've gotten to this place. It's basically like the metaverse, right? Like this is the metaverse before the metaverse, but he was talking about maps and how at some point in the future people will mistake the maps that we create to designate the world as the real thing itself, because we aren't living and existing and interacting with the environment in the same way. And so now people are buying real estate in the metaverse and trying to have relationships with men and women in the metaverse. And this is now, we have a term for it now called virtual reality. And so we're trying to imitate these spaces that were once, you know, kind of a big thing, you know, like kids going outside and playing, and me going to the bar to talk to a girl and stuff of this nature. They're trying to imitate that stuff. In ancient Egypt, this is exactly what was going on. So the Batwa don't have to build Nan temple. Why? Because they live in the forest. They don't have to build a school of pharmacology, because you actually have to go into the bush and go into the forest to pick the actual herbs and study, because you're living in the temple. That's a living temple. But the ancient Egyptians, they had to imitate. So, you know, and I know I have some photos, but because I have so many photos, I don't off the back remember exactly what temples it is. But there's a few temples that when you go into the temple, at the bottom of the temple, you will see images of like water lines. And then, of course, you see the big you know, pillars emerging out of the, you know, the bottom of the temple. So it's supposed to represent like in some of them like a kind of a river, some of them like and like the delta, you know, saying area and plants. They're imitating these things because they don't have a lot of trees, they don't have all of this. And so this is one of the reasons why you got to put the stuff on the walls, because they can't go out in nature and just pick the stuff. That's why they were doing all these expeditions going into Central Africa, bringing back trees and seeds, trying to replant them in Egypt. They have to get their wood coming out of you know, the Middle East. And so that's why they built relationships with them in that area. And so, you know, the culture, the fundamental essence of the culture emerges in these places where the gods are a living thing in the forest, in the trees, in the plants. And that's where the culture emerges. And then it comes up and they have to recreate these things because it doesn't exist in abundance natively in that particular area. Let me see. Let's go. 100 people in the chat. Keep liking and commenting. Appreciate it. And speaking of that, that's right. Big up the video by liking it. If you are new to this program and this channel, please subscribe. You know, I'm trying to hit the 10,000 mark, so please share the video. We just rapping. You know, we just kind of chatting, shooting off the hip. This is an after party show from an all-nighter that our brother Wujawu was having on his channel. So we just brought the conversation over here. It is open. I have the link pinned to the top of the chat. So if you are if you're listening live on Facebook, then I don't know what to tell you. You would have to come to the my YouTube channel, and matter of fact, I could just share the link. Figure out I can do that. If you want to join the conversation, hit the link. And so it is, for those who are on YouTube, it is pinned at the top, but I'm sharing it again in the chat. So it should show up on the Asarim Hotep page on Facebook. If you want to join the conversation, again, you do not have to join with your video on. We know it's early, and so we're just kind of shooting. I'm just kind of answering questions and asking for opinions or whatnot from people who are on the panel. And some maybe took a nap now, and others probably making something to eat. You know, I think Brother DeJed getting ready for church on Sunday, on this Sunday. And you know, so I know it's early, you know, so it's probably a reasonable time for those who are across the waters. But you know, on the East Coast, it is 9 a.m. in the morning, it's 8 a.m. Central Time. And then, so what does that make it? What, 6 a.m. on the West Coast? And so, you know, I don't even know if it's light outside on the West Coast. But so I do appreciate each and every one of you who have joined the conversation. And so, you know, we're just shooting the foot. So I'll answer as many questions as or reply to many statements as possible. But if you want to join the conversation, you have something that you want to contribute to the conversation. Again, there's no topic, so whatever's on your mind, you know, come through. So Court says, appreciate the morning session. How challenging is it to force these types of debates with European Egyptologists, thinking in terms of Lerone Bennett's work exposing truth on Abraham Lincoln in 2000? It's always a challenge because it's, you know, again, there's money involved. And people have built their careers off of certain paradigms and perspectives. And so, you know, it's a lot to be able to be forced into a new paradigm, and you have decades of work, you know, in this direction in terms of a particular point of view and paradigm. So, you know, a lot of them is just not going to have it. But at the same time, you know, we're not waiting to have the debates with them. You know, the what you can simply do is you do the work, you publish the work, and then you just make the information public, and you provide the public with the necessary methods to be able to defend the work publicly. They would be forced to deal with us one way or another. And so we have Seshew, who is in the conversation. Welcome to the panel. Peace and blessings. What's on your mind? Testing 1 2 1 2. If you are speaking, we cannot hear you, or at least I can't hear you.
No, we can't hear you. Just try to drop down and come right back up. It might fix it.
Yeah, you may have to come back in. Drop out and come back in. All righty, well, I'll just go back to the appreciate it. So they got to understand how human social behavior transfer from one culture to another, especially in one locale of the world, which is going to have an influence on each other. Yeah, all cultures in interactions influence each other one way or another. And you know, what they have to understand is it's, you know, because we African scholars have always acknowledged the multi-heritage of ancient Egypt. Like when you read Chancellor Williams' Destruction of Black Civilizations, which was published in the 70s, he talks about this mixed heritage, but he also acknowledges the inter-African, you know, origins of the ideals and customs that it came to express itself in ancient Egypt in a very unique way. And that's what they're trying to. They're like, the racism is so strong that they try to deny any interaction, any connection with Black African people, because they have in their minds that we just aren't those type of people who can imagine and create and come up with these things. But this is recent history. So that's one of the reasons why I like Martin Bernal's Black Athena series, because you know he divides it into the ancient model versus the Aryan model, right? And so when you the ancient model, like when we're quoting Diodorus Siculus and I saw someone come in and then they dropped out. But you can hit the link and come back in, whoever you are who just came in. But I'm sorry. So like the ancient model, where they're all describing the ancient Egyptians as black folks with these stereotypical features, and then you have the area model who tries to deny all that. Like the people who lived there and saw them, they just made all that stuff up. Different people, different time periods, writing about different things, describing the exact same thing, but all of them are wrong. But you come 2,000 years later, ain't met nobody, and you know more than the people that was living at the time on the ground. Like, it's just craziness in these internet and academic streets. Sekou Kella, there are two groups in modern Egypt, the Islamic and the secular parties. The Islamic parties want to rid of everything, while the secular wants to preserve the antiquities for money. Exactly.
Really?
And we have Sekou on. And are you there? Is your mic working?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I could hear you.
Yeah.
All righty. Peace and blessings. Welcome to the program. And what's on your mind?
Yeah, I just, I just want to thank you, for the show all the time. It's very educative and we are learning a lot. Egypt, I'm from West Africa, by the way, so we know a lot about these Arabs and their racism towards African people. So what's happening in Egypt is like what's happening in most of North Africa. So they try to see themselves as white. So if you read Ibn Khaldun, since that time, some of the primary documents on West African history, the Arabs perceive themselves as white. So whatever racism come from Europe, they try to align themselves with it, because there is a privilege of aligning yourself with white supremacy. Because if you align yourself with white supremacy, then the privilege that come with it, you benefit. So that's what is happening. In Egypt, there are two groups, like I say in my comment. The Islamic Brotherhood, those who are extremist Muslim, they want to destroy everything on surrounding Egypt. They don't want to have anything to do with it. And they believe that in fact, they always call it African. They believe it is African. But now there is this other secular group who are now going to school in the States, who understand the benefit of tourism, who understand that they can get some money out of it. They are trying to preserve those things because of the tourist attraction. But the Muslim conservative group want to get rid of it. So that's the two groups you have there. They only say these things on internet, but in their own community, you cannot praise the pharaohs. They know that. They can only do these things on internet, but within their communities, you cannot praise the pharaohs, that they were great. All those display they did when they built a new museum, it was all for the Western world to come and see and give them some money. That's all they were doing it for. The Arabs will not go to Arabia and put Muhammad out of his grave and put him in a museum. They will never do that. They will never go and look for all the Caliph, Abu Bakr. Where are their graves? Why aren't they bringing out all the great Islamic Khalifa, put their bodies out and put them in the museum for all to see? But they can do that in Egypt because those people are not their ancestors. Iran, in Iraq, how many of them are putting their ancestors out of their graves to put them in museums? See? So it's very clear that they are doing it for money. And we have an advantage. The advantage we have is that we are willing to practice the culture. We are willing to learn the philosophy and practicalize it. So that's where we're going to win, because they will not be able to practice the culture. They will name their children after Muhammad and Abu Bakr. We will take the Tahaka. We will take the names of the pharaohs. So we have advantage on a cultural level. So that's why I think this battle we stand advantage to win, and we just need to keep pushing on. And like you said, Asa, there is no need to back down on the internet. We should go confrontational. When they come to attack, we have to attack back. We don't have to sit and say we are avoiding it. No, history is war. Sheikh Anta Diop said, there is no group of people who will praise other people's history. It never happened. Other group always want to play down the history of other people. That's what you need to know. It's a constant war, and you have to keep fighting it.
Exactly. And that's why, you know, I mentioned this earlier in the program, but it's worth repeating again. This is exactly why I am such a stickler for proper research methods and having sound arguments and the like. Because when we're going up against these folks, whether they're in academia or the pseudos online, you know, you always want to make sure that you are grounded in the proper research methods and that you know the history before you start coming on these internet streets making all kinds of conversation and claims and can't support it. Because one of the strategies and what they'll do is they'll take the most ridiculous of us and try to make them seem as if they're the norm and they are representative of the points and arguments being made by the serious scholars in our community. And that's why, you know, we fight against, you know, we our own when it comes to this information, and we have to fight those without you know, outside of the communities.
Yeah, I don't know if you watched the when powerful African American scholar. I think he's in Harvard University. What is his name? He's a mixed race. He's
Henry Louis Gates.
Louis Gates. Henry Louis Gates having a debate with a European. The European is telling him that, and Henry Louis Gates is saying they couldn't have been black because he's seen the Nubian painted black and he's seen the ancient Egyptian painted red, and the Egyptians were having the Nubians in chains. So the man was telling him, if you can't play the color game like that, because we've seen the Nubian pharaohs painted red. So what will you say about that? Because if you go to El Kuru temple tombs, you see the Nubian pharaohs painted the same dark red. So there must be, we have to give an interpretation to this color. Either it is about Egyptian identity, that Egyptians use the color as their national identity card or way of identifying their groups, or they pick the very extreme of their color, and then they pick the very extreme of Nubian color to represent them. But anytime they show groups, you see the same dark red and dark color, and Nubian pharaohs also painted themselves like that. Then he said, well, why are they painting the Nubian way, the stereotype, African stereotypical features? So also, the European told him that, look, if you see the Nubian painting themselves, like the queens, all those queens, when they put in themselves like that. So it's a political painting, the propaganda. They have to do that. Maybe they pick people to, because even in Africa, in the villages, before we even met Europeans, we made mockery of ourselves. There is kind of discrimination between people who live in the farms, who are doing hard work, who look very tough because they work on the farm, and those who are in the city, who are doing little of labor job, and they have a better way of living. We make fun of people who come from the village, who look rough. That's not racism. That's the way we, even in Africa, if you grow up in the interior, that's how we do. Those who work on the farm, they work hard. Their hair look hard. Their face look very hard. You make fun of them because you live in the city. You don't look rough like that. It wasn't about racism. You see, but I was surprised that Henry Louis Gates was thinking like that.
I'm not surprised because he's not.
Henry Louis Gates was thinking like that.
An Africologist. He's not trained in those. He's not even really trained in Africana studies like that. And so, you know, this is why I don't know if Molefe Kitty. I know he's been wanting one, but I don't know if Molefe I know they've had discussions, but I don't know if it's been videotaped. Of Henry Louis Gates and Dr. Molefe Kitty Asante having these discussions back in the day. And
Henry Louis, I'm sorry.
I'm sorry?
I just wanted to say this real quick. Henry Louis Gates in the 90s had called Dr. Ben and Dr. Clark pseudos in the 90s.
I believe it. And but you notice that when he does that, he is giving funding for the types of programs that he does.
Mm-hmm.
They wouldn't fund a Milana Karenga that way. And this is what we mean by the inherent racism. Is as long as you're talking bad about Africans like that, you get funding.
Right.
But if you are speaking highly of Africans and showing these interconnections and the origins of these concepts coming from African people, they don't fund that. And so we have to fund. So that's why, like, even with my documentary film, I'm coming to the community to help along with, my own personal funding, with it, because this is the stuff that we have to do in order to get the message out. But they'll get a whole grant and, they'll have all kinds of special effects and aliens coming down from the heavens and building the pyramids and they documentaries. And we can't get any of that stuff. And so this is the kind of fight that we find ourselves in. But regardless of if we're not fully funded in the same way that they are, we do the best with what we can with what we're given. And we get the message out there regardless. And every single time, people don't really give the respect to Dr. Molefe Asante that they should, because he's one of those pioneers that has forced how even academia does scholarship. It's the same thing with Sheikh Anta Diop and Theophilo Benga. Before them, They weren't talking about no multidisciplinary research and methods and all that. It was that multidisciplinary research that was busting their ass in Cairo. And it was like, you know what, we're gonna have to come stronger than this, because our people in Egyptology aren't trained like that. When you have a physicist on the damn team, who knows about logic and how science works and what constitutes a scientific argument, then it's a problem for them. So they had to change it up. Same thing with like just sociology and history, before Afrocentricity. Now you have other types of centricity in terms of Latin centricity, Asian centricity. Like all of these are legit paradigms in academia as a result of these African scholars changing and correcting the research methods that were being used in academia. And so this is why they're afraid of people like us coming into Egypt, because we changed the paradigm and we F up the money.
Right. Definitely. When people listen to you, Brother Asa, listen to Molefe Kitty Asante, unless there's something wrong with you, but once you listen to these people, if you are an African, you are an African, you have African heritage, this, you feel it, that this is the way to go. You see that this paradigm is clear. It's the paradigm that can liberate our people. It's not confusing to people. I've seen a great scholar like Ali Manzuri, that passed away in Kenya. They were trying to push what they call triple heritage paradigm. Yeah. So that the African must identify himself within the Arabo-Islamic culture or Judo-Christianity of the West, or what they call traditional African culture. So they say that a black man must take these three different cultures as his identity. So Diop said that's a contradiction. How do you say because Arab came yesterday and colonized, or the European came yesterday and colonized, doesn't it become our heritage? So are you asking the Jews to take a German heritage? Okay. So it's like, that's why Molificator said we are not objects. We are not objects being acted upon. We are subject of history. We have to begin with ourselves. We don't have to start because an Arab met us yesterday. So now we take Arab identity. So if Chinese colonize us tomorrow, we become Chinese Africans. You see, if Indians should capture Africa tomorrow, then we become Buddhist Africans. You see, so I don't know what these scholars are thinking, that they want us to be something else other than ourselves. So my final question here is, Brasa, is there anything being done? Because if you look at the Afrocentric community now, I'm very sure we are going to 1 million, or 1 million at least. I know many people are spectators. The scholars have agree with this philosophy going down to Africa and then the diaspora. Is there any way, I know what Happy is doing and all that, to really benefit from this community in a way that the scholars can come together? Some of these conferences they are having to now go beyond Egypt and say, how do we organize this community and have an institution, an educational institution that can help? Like some of you wanting to do documentary, there is no funding. Our scholars are being boycotted. There's a lot of symposium going around the world. They are trying to avoid our scholars. They invite the Henry Louis Gates. They invite the Mbokolo and all these, the Biogo. They don't invite Obenga. They don't invite all these people. So we have all of our scholars out there that are still being boycotted like Diop. So is there an institution now we can build? Because the Jewish were just few group of people, the Zionists, that came together and they were funding each other until they got Israel. So we cannot put all Africans on board. It will never happen. There are Black people who will continue to remain in the triple heritage paradigm. So we that have picked up the Africa-centric paradigm, we are now a community. We are now a new Africans with new identity. Even our choice of marriage will be different. So is there a way that for us now to have an institution to look up to, that will build our academics, that will build our social, even economics, to be able to help even scholarship-wise, so that we build a new African society? Because we cannot wait until all these people wake up. It's not going to happen. That's my question.
But the short answer is I don't know. I know what my intentions are. So, for example, like I've recently started the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology, right? And it is matter of fact, at this year's DIOP conference, which will be held in Philadelphia, my presentation is on the creation of the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology and how we are reorienting Egyptology in terms of what I call now river studies, right? And so the subfield of Africology, I'm using Egyptology so people will be familiar with it. They have a term that they're familiar with it, but I've relabeled it Intu-Com. And the Intu-Com part is the association between the Intu cultures in ancient Egypt. So this will be the subject of the primary research that is done through this discipline. Like I'm creating an entire discipline, and the axis, just how like in the standard Egyptological departments, they have their orientation in the Middle East. So that's why they put Egypt in Near Eastern studies. So what I'm doing is putting Egypt back into now river studies. So it's we can go beyond that, but the main focus is the history along the Nile, starting from Ethiopia in the Great Lakes region in Central Africa, going all the way to the Delta. and looking at all of those peoples and cultures and migrations to put together a more cohesive and accurate narrative regarding ancient Nile River societies as a whole. And so, you know, part of that conversation is creating an actual institute on 3 fronts. Its own independent institute just out in the community, and an academic department in one of the, you know, HBCUs at least, and the what I call the communiversity aspect. Like that's what we're doing like kind of now. But, you know, and part of that conversation is, well, how do we fund something like this? And, you know, do we have to have and get involved, for example, like in real estate and all this, like what can we do? And then, you know, of course, encourage people to donate so that we can have an endowment like with other institutes. So, you know, their graduates go out into the workforce, make some money, and then, you know, they have these elaborate balls and dinners, and they do all kinds of fundraising to help keep the department going and get scholarships and the like. So that's what I want to do. But that's something along what you're saying, but that's kind of more small scale, even though it's a big endeavor, but it's still kind of small scale in comparison to what you're talking about. But I think it's along the same lines. So I know that is in the works. We're in the initial stages of that. But you know, as far as like a just like a kind of a separate, like I've been suggesting this for the longest, because when I would go to these Africana Studies conferences, I would hear a lot of the, you know, the older professors, you know, those same ones who grew up in the 60s, who were fighting. They were young, you know, students and teenagers then, who were fighting to get Black studies into the universities and to be taught by Black professors and all of that. You know, they're now older, they're now our elders, and you know, they'll be passing soon. But that same fire and spirit is not in the younger people to try to keep the departments and stuff going. And this is a cause for concern. And I remember one DOP conference, to be exact, you know, I was just thinking like, well, at least, because, okay, let me back up. I left out something. What the professor was talking about was how they're closing departments and programs, or merging them with other departments and programs across America, and how this is becoming, you know, an issue and a thing. And so what I'm like is, well, why don't we just create our own, at minimum, online institution, to where people can still get college credits and degrees from these institutions. And I remember for a while, Molefe Asante actually had a graduate program that was online, that was separate from the Temple University. But for some reason, it fell through. And so this is one of the reasons why, like, I went back to school, and I'm still in school with the computer science degree, because I want to be a part of a team that creates an online bona fide institute that our people can get this type of information, and we can, so no matter what, if a department and stuff that closes here, they still have access to the information. And so, you know, I'm trying to see how we can work it to where, like, you know, if you can take a course with us online, because we're, you know, we will be vouching to get certified and everything. And, you know, your classes count towards a minor or an elective at, you know, whatever university. you know, or you can get like, you know, separate certificates, additional training, you know, all this other kind of stuff, and, you know, be able to put on conferences, and even and then from there to have, you know, our own building. So that's why I'm like, we need to get into real estate. And, you know, so, you know, you can even, for example, if we was to get a building where at the bottom, you know, it was like a business or an office space, but at the top it was residents who lived there, right? So that the residents are ultimately paying the mortgage on the building, and, you know, so we just rent out all the other spaces, and then but the center of the institute would be there, you know, and you just got to kind of start off small, and then you just kind of build from there to where you can, you know, then you get your own separate, you know, building and institute that way. And so, you know, there's different ways in which we can do it. It's just that, you know, we have to be a bit more technologically minded and business minded. And unfortunately, a lot of our elder scholars are not that. So it's going to take some effort. But I don't know if that works outside of what I'm trying to do with the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. So keep in mind that the Dark School, they actually have an Egyptology department at the University of Sheikh Anta Diop in Senegal. And I know Dr. Oscar Pafuma, Omen Digi, you know, he is starting a department in Cameroon. But of course, these are dominated by French-speaking Africans.
Right.
So that poses another barrier for the most of us if we do not speak a continental African language. You know, 7 times out of 10, we're going to speak English primarily, and so that cuts a lot of us off from certain literature and things. And ultimately, I wish that Africans would adopt, for example, Kiswahili, and then write, you know, books and have it at least translated in Kiswahili, so that be the lingua franca that we can communicate and write in scholarship, you know, because you find Egyptology works in Russian, in Italian, and all of this stuff. And, you know, even now in Portuguese. As a matter of fact, Chinese people now got Egyptology departments writing in Chinese.
Definitely. Swahili is definitely moving fast. I think South Africa, Rwanda, they've all joined. They picked up Swahili. But it's the same thing, brother sir. We have people in power who are not African-centered. We have Africans who are still pushing for the triple heritage. We must be Jew, Christian, and Arab. In fact, in my village, you will hear Arabic up to my village, people learning Arabic. But they don't want to learn. There are written script in my language, like Madingo. We have our own script, we write, but they don't want to use it. They think Arabic is sacred, they think Arabic is holy. Okay. Just one individual decided to create an entire script in 1976. Suleiman.
It looked like you went out.
People don't want to use it. They think that it will remove Arabic from their mosques. You see? So they are attacking it. That's how unfortunate it is. So I believe Kiswahili should be pushed, because some of these things we are doing, when we start doing it in African languages, I think it will change. It will take a very new dimension, because now we will have to be saying things, you know, in our own way. But one of the things to be enriched with new vocabularies. Like linguists, we need experts to do that. Maybe we will use the ancient Egyptian vocabularies to kind of just infuse it into the Swahili, because Swahili has some Arabic terms that might not be able to explain some African concepts, because it has borrowed some word from Arabic. So if it is possible, like what they did to Hebrew, we can have scholars to sit down and look for some Meduneta words and infuse them into Swahili. Then we create a language. I think it's not impossible.
Even if, like, if we wanted to, you know, I'm kind of Congo biased, so just, you know, this I just have to acknowledge that I'm Congo biased, right? We can use Kiswahili, and Kiswahili is going to have, because it's a Bantu language, it's going to have the Egyptian or cognate words in the language natively. But even if it comes down to, you know, like choosing an Arabic word, you know, or whatnot, we can, my argument is just find the equivalent in Chiluba or Kikongo and replace it there. This is related natively to Kiswahili, and you're going to find these ancient Egyptian words regardless in Kikongo and Chiluba for the most part. So that, like, that's not if that, you know, stops some folks because there's some Arabic words, you know, that's easy. That's light work. But yeah, hold on, brother Dejed, are you still there?
Yeah, I'm here.
All right, because I know you was getting ready for church, so I didn't want to stop you from you know, you practicing the tambourine. You know, this morning.
Yeah, and that's about the only instrument you want me to be on, because I can hit it against my hand and keep time. That's about it, though. You definitely don't want me on a trumpet.
Man, people be sleeping on the tambourine to get the party going.
Joe would.
You know, don't sleep on the tambourine. And peace of blessings to all of you who are just joining us. BK Trainer in the building. OG Gorilla is in the building. Good morning, Fritz, Shaggy. I don't know if I shouted out Ayo Maaka earlier, but if not, peace and blessings. Thank you. And Brother Conan Lee, you know, shared the link of that conversation. And so I guess the conversation that you was mentioning was featuring a Stuart Tyson Smith and Henry Louis Gate Jr. So if, you know, y'all want to check out that, he says it's at the end of the discussion. So this is the link. So regardless, you should be able to at least, I know if you can't type it out fully, just look up Stuart Tyson Smith and Henry Louis Gate Jr. and you should be able to pull that conversation up. Peace and blessings to 42 tribes. Let me see. He said that he saw the exchange, and Gates also called Egyptians brothers and sisters. I haven't seen it, so I'm looking forward to checking it out when I have some time. Hit Flicks is in the building. Well, the pharaohs didn't paint themselves white, and they also showed Asiatics in chains. So this is what's interesting. One of the challenges that I put to the Arabized Russian bots was, let me see if I can go and kind of show from my Asar Imhotep page. I'm going to share my screen and just kind of go down to, so let me share my screen here. And Chrome tab and Facebook. Boom. So here's my return of the Mac coming out of Facebook jail. My meme. So that's my official coming out of Facebook jail song. Return of the Mac. For those who don't get it, but I think this is one of the pictures, and then I have some subsequent pictures. But so this is from the tomb of Akhet or Nakhet of Thebes. And I don't know if I can make it any bigger. I guess not. But so this is one of the photos that I showed, and you can see this is clearly, so this isn't photoshopped. I'm not trying to make anything darker. This is a I don't know what ethnic group that this person belongs to, but it's safe to say that he is not of recent African ancestry in terms of the stereotypical Africanness. So he provides a good contrast between the coloration of the people. And this is especially for those who try to say that the women were painted yellow and the men were painted dark because the women were inside all the time and they were lighter than just stupid stuff that you hear on the internet. Anyway, so my challenge to any of the Arabized Russian bots or anybody who makes this argument, find us a tomb relief, a papyrus where there's 10 or more people in the entire imagery where everybody is painted as an Egyptian, that is clear that these people are supposed to represent the Egyptians, that they're painted close to this man's color here. Because what they tried to do is, we know that there was foreigners and nativized foreigners in Egypt who look like closer to this person here, right? We know that they existed and they were represented in the artwork, but you never find any artwork like this. So this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, no, yeah, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. So just in this image alone, at 15, the sister right behind his head, there's 15 individuals here, all of them the same skin complexion, hair types, and the like. These are clearly Black African folks, right? You will never find a tomb where somebody is represented looking like this all throughout the tomb with this color. They clearly could paint this color because they painted all the Asiatics with this color. So they had the color. But the question you always have to ask is, why, if they had the color and they painted they painted the foreigners accurately that came from Asia and Europe using these skin tones, why they never painted themselves with these skin tones and these hairstyles, et cetera, et cetera? They don't want to answer that question. This is what gets you marked for hate speech on Facebook, because you're pointing out a fact. I'm in the comments, show me, like this one is maybe closer, but this is still a dark. It's not the color of the foreigners. And then you always got to be careful about reproductions, because a lot of times people are showing reproductions that are drawings. But like, how many people is in this photo? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So there's 9 people in this, and this isn't even the whole image. This is just one corner of the larger tomb wall. And so you see the consistency when there's a group of Egyptians, how they paint themselves, but they don't want to show those photos.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I got 2 things, but I'm saying real quick. I just resent you the video again, the interview I did, and with that image that you showed of I don't know what the guy was in that photo, but did you ever notice? Well, did any of us notice that there was a whole block of it that was chipped off in the middle? Looked like somebody was using a hammer and sickle or something. Like right there. Yep, where you got where you got your mouse at.
Yep. Now I don't know if, because it doesn't look like. A matter of fact, I should say 16 people. So where this is knocked off, you can see somebody. I didn't count them here, but you can see their arm, their legs, and or whatnot here. So this is a sister sitting down. So that's 16 black folks just in this corner of the relief. But in this situation, this may look like it was either like an accident, something bounced up against it. Probably somebody did a hammer, but when you look at the whole scene, it doesn't look like there was just this massive, like, purposeful, destruction across the whole tomb. Sometimes stuff just don't stick. So if you understand how the tombs are made, like, this stuff is plastered on here. It's not like they just carved it and painted. Like they put a smooth plaster on first. And then they, kind of draw their grid lines, and then they come in and carve and draw and then repaint over it so that everything is, kind of smooth. And so sometimes that it just doesn't last up. It just falls off because something is cracked. But it wouldn't make sense because you just blocked off one person's face, but look at all of everybody else, like that. So my assumption would be that this was more than likely either a natural fall off or like an accident. Something bumped into it, dropped into it, cracked it, and just over time the pieces fell. I don't know, but I don't. In this instance, I don't necessarily assume foul play, to be exact, because you can see, for example, like the cracking up here.
Yep.
So like these. Remember, this stuff is like 25, sometimes 3,000 years old in some instance. So if you ever been to grandma's house, it ain't been kept up in a while. Just imagine, this is like the paint's coming off here. There's like a hole right here, so they were shooting inside the pyramid tombs. Well, this isn't a pyramid. It's just a Theban tomb, but so where is it? So here's mine. This is the Book of the Dead of Nakhet. So there was a lot of them. I remember I got a lot of them blocked in Egypt now because I'm just tired of the BS. But this is a direct artifact found in the British Museum, and I got the link up at the top. But anyway, in there. So let me stop there and see if anybody else has any questions. Let me see what's says. Among sensible people, you could have that understanding, but most people within this community will take offense, of course. And to that point, this is why it's just important just to do the work and get it done and not wait on the masses. If we wait on the masses to agree, it'll never come into fruition. So you just get it started. You do the best of what you can. You kind of lay the blueprint for how you want it to expand. And once a lot of people, and we got to understand that people have lives. They're in other types of industries. They may not see the importance of something like this. But if you have set it up and you started it and you start doing well and people can see your progress, people will support. They just have to see you doing it first, because us, we want to make sure that you ain't scamming nobody, that you ain't out here on some bull, because then they want to make sure that what they're giving their money to and what they're supporting is on the up and up. So just understanding that about our people, you understand the fight that you have to do. So just make it happen, and make sure that you have integrity doing what you do, and then you come to the community with something already. You don't come, this one thing I find out, you don't come to the community with an idea of what should be done. You come to the community, this is what I've done, this is what I'm doing, this is what I want to do, this is how you can help. And I think that needs to be the model for any of us that want to accomplish and do something big with the help of our people. Just do it. Make sure that is done and professionally, and it's done in an appealing way, and that you are a person who is likable. This is why I haven't cussed out as many people as I need to in these internet streets. Because I just got to remember, what my goals are, and I can't be brought down, dealing with the chief X's of the world, for example, and you lose all credibility, integrity. Every now and then you got to give somebody that work, but it got to be far and in between. But if you come to the people professionally as best as possible, you're taking their input seriously, and suggestions, and you're integrating, you're showing that you're not alone, and make sure that this stuff is not personality driven. That's why I name, anything with, and nothing has my name on it. If I do well and people want to build a monument in my honor when I die, fine. But right now I give the glory to others. That's why it's the Martin Delaney Center for Egyptology. The Mbongi and stuff like that. I don't put my name, so it has to go beyond me, because I want to build it up to a certain point and then have it be on autopilot, because it's systems that we need to create. So it's not just the institution, the buildings, it's the system. What is the system in place that will keep feeding itself and growing, that it can take energy from everywhere else and feed itself and grow and expand.
Right.
We called Egyptians brothers and sisters in another video, and the one with Smith Gates was true Negro in Egypt, and Smith had to explain the difference between ethnicity and race. I'm surprised I haven't seen this, or if I have, it's just out of my memory.
Yeah, I even watched. There's my school. There's an article they gave us about hunter gatherers. So we did a study on hunter-gatherers. So we did a study on the San people, the Khoisan people in South Africa. We are told that during the apartheid, they were not considered as Negro. I was very surprised, because if you look at the San people, they have the same hair that we have in West Africa. The so-called, they are so-called Bushmen, quote unquote. They qualify into everything European will call a Negro, but because their skin color was not jet black, but they lived together with the other black Africans, and they are not mixed race, and they didn't mix with anybody, but they are just red. So I'm saying that if Egyptology are struggling with this dark red color, it's all over the continent. I did not see it among the Fulanese. I did not see it among the Khoisan. I did not see it among the Tutsi. I did not see it in Eritrea. It's all over the continent with different shades. You have people that even look lighter, up to modern Egyptian. Then they are African. They have all the African features. They didn't mix up. They are in the continent. If you go in Guinea, in West Africa, Guinea, there's a city called in the Futa Jallo Highlands, the Futa Jallo Highland of Guinea, where you have Labe. They are all light-skinned. These are Fulani people with long hair. They didn't mix at all. Ask anyone who has been to Labe and Kundara in Guinea, the Guinea Highland. That's where the Fulani live. They are all of them are light-skinned, and they are not mixed with anybody. These are Africans. You see, so I don't understand why it should even be confusing that these people painted themselves dark red. And even until today, the South Sudanese are the darkest people on the continent. So if the Nubian were painted jet black, that makes sense, because the darkest people on the continent are actually from that area. You see,
the Dongala, right?
The South Sudanese are darker than other Africans. You see, so if a Fulani was to paint a Yoruba man a few centuries ago, they will not paint even Nigeria today. Okay, the current president of Nigeria and his family, put their photo up and put the former president Obasanjo from the South, put up. They don't look the same. The northern Nigerian Fulani are light skinned. They have all these lot of features that you will say ancient Egyptian have. Then the southern Nigerians will have what so-called you will call Bantu. And Nigeria today I'm talking about.
Indeed. Before we move on, I just wanted to share this book title that I have here. And if you want to waste your money and you just got some money to spare and you want a good laugh, I highly recommend this book. It has some jewels, but you have to you really have to filter. But this book, Pygmy Kitabu by Jean-Pierre Halle with Alex Pele, a revealing account of the origin and legends of the African pygmies by the author of Congo Kitabu and Animal Kitabu. Now it's a good work, but you have to filter because it's a bunch of BS in it. And so this is the so-called pygmy, or a representation of the so-called pygmy, the Batwa, in Central Africa, right? And the author is someone who spent a lot of time with them and lived among them and even fought on behalf. I think he lost his hand, his right hand. Yeah, he lost his right hand dealing with and fighting Europeans who were trying to take over the area. But because he's a European of the time, he cannot separate his inherent racism. And so because and this book is unique because he is connecting the religious and philosophical tradition of these Batwa with the ancient Egyptians, and he's attempting to show connections in that way. And so again, if you get this book and you're trying to make connections, I would not just raw take the information and try to use it. You're going to have to come back behind it and do some more work. And there's some things that you're able to establish and other things that are a little bit problematic. But what was interesting with this book is that this book here, and this is a side note. So we know that Dr. Ben's famous, they came from the foothills of the mountain of the moon where the god Hapi dwells, that quote. He actually says something similar in this book. And this book was published around the same time as Dr. Ben's book. But like Dr. Ben, he makes the argument that it was in the Papyrus of Hunefer. He doesn't give his source. But what this makes me believe is that there was some source that was circulating at the time that, we just don't know what it is. That, when he was quoting it, he was believing that it was just common knowledge. And so he didn't provide the source. He doesn't word it in the exact same way that Dr. Ben does, but it's something similar, right? So that's just a side note. But again, this you can't just take it, the text just raw as it is, and then try to use it to make the ancient Egyptian connections. It's going to take some additional work to kind of systematize it. And so, but what's interesting is, and this is the point that I want to make, is that he's trying to argue that these are white folks, that these are Caucasians who came in from the Caucasus and migrated and settled into Africa, and this is and they just got a little bit darker since they've been there, but these are really Caucasians according to this author.
Yeah, it's funny because during the time that work came out, one of the crazy race theories they had was that there were people in Africa that were Negroids, but they weren't Negroes, as they would put it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so that book is a prime example of that. Like, there's some real wacky stuff in it. Because of course, like you were saying, another argument he makes is that who they consider to be like African people, or what you would call today a sub-Saharan African, if that's a term everybody likes using. But he argues in there as well, for the people that haven't read it, he argues that they weren't the first people in Africa. So there's a lot of craziness in there. But like you said, there's good stuff in it if you know how to kind of like pick through that stuff and chop it down. But yeah, you got to do a lot of work though if you're not familiar with the type of rhetoric that they were using back then.
Exactly. So it's I always recommend this book, but I'd be like, you need to have some background before trying to accept it on all points. But I'll share my screen just again one last time. I keep saying one last time, but it's more than one last time. But this is just a random folder I got. So of course we see Osiris from the Ptolemaic period with that big Negro nose.
He got my nose.
Exactly. Here's a representation.
Got the sister shape at that last statue you showed.
See this one, exactly. But I just wanted to show like the skin color in which they're trying to represent. Like it's close to like this is the color. Like this is a reddish brown color. It matches almost the hair here. So this is going to be a totally different color than if you compare it to the Dinka. These are kind of
dark brown.
Yeah, so like they're my color. Like the color that you see represented in ancient Egypt is my color for the most part. So I don't know if y'all caught that
the woolly hair
conversation that we was having on Wujawus, but I was showing this earlier picture and I was showing that how all the hairstyles are represented in the ancient Egyptian script. And he wasn't understanding, Brother Aku, that you could be looking at a Nubian or whatnot, and it's in this ancient Egyptian. Like, so he would look at this and say, this is the ancient Egyptian, not understanding that this is the same hairstyle and group from the people that is just that you would call a Nubian today. It's the same folks.
But aren't those wigs though that the Egyptians so-called was putting on their head? Aren't they wigs?
That's the Arabized Russian bot response to like there's a big wig industry going on in ancient Egypt. It's hot. Have y'all been to Egypt? Do you know how hot it is? You think these people are walking around with Afro wigs and doing all of this? Is their hair. Like, where were you going to get it? Who put together an Afro wig? Where was you going to get that? How would you cut that off and put that together in this time? We know you can do it in modern times, but what kind of wig is this? Where was you going to get this style of wig from?
It look like a helmet.
He got the juices still just dripping all out the side of his forehead.
Right, it's down in his beard.
You made fun of him in the 80s with
the Jerry curl.
He got this look like him, like Like we just took the photo and put it on the wall. This is Photoshop of him.
You looking like
the
Rick
Egyptian
James.
tomb walls. But look at the skin color. This is what I'm trying to tell you here. This brother has a reddish brown skin color. And that's what they tried to stylize and represent there. So you see this here?
He looking like D.L. Hughley.
Basically. What wig? Where are these Afro wigs like? You know, where's the industry? What was the industry called?
Got woolly hair going on, like Herodotus said.
See, here's a wig. But then again, see, that's another question that you have to ask. Why, when they do create the wigs, why are they all in the styles of the Africans to the south? Why are those wigs considered royal wigs?
That's what Diodorus was talking about.
Mm-hmm. See the skin color of this brother?
Yep.
So when these are real people's skin color, this isn't symbolic. That's what these people look like. This is their skin tone. These look like African American brothers. There's a brother that you can find on the block look just like this. There's a sister you know look just like this. What is her skin? Look at her skin tone and color. This is what you find in the ancient Egyptian reliefs.
Would it be wrong to say that if we look at the people in the South, that those are the actual descendants of that'll give us a clearer indication of what the Egyptians look like?
Yes, that's my argument. And these are clearly Nubian sisters on the side, but look at the different color schemes, the diversity in skin tones. Now they do this for many different reasons, because when you have a group of people together, they try to alter the skin tone. But this shows you here that the Nubians were depicted not only in a super dark skin, but in the same reddish brown skin. And when you go into the Nubian village, all the people have the color just like this. And it's the same hairstyle. This is her. This ain't no wig. Where's she getting this wig from? She get it from China. Was China doing the wigs back then?
The ancient Egyptians had license, sorry. That's why they was wearing wigs. They had license.
Like, no, we know they had the industry. Our sisters been doing the hair like this. But that's because, some of them were priestesses, and they had to adhere to the same rules as the male priest. And, they don't like their head bald. Had nothing to do with lice. Black people got oils natural in their head. We don't be running around with lice like that.
If you're going to make an argument for something being symbolic, like, you'd have to look at the images of the sun, because the sun is painted the same colors as the people.
Exactly.
So if you're going to make that argument, you got to look at that. Because if I go outside and I look and the sun has that burgundy color, I'm going right back in the house.
I mean, we about to die.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
This sister looked like somebody I would be trying to holler at the Odun, the Odun festival in Philly. Let me see her in real life.
It'll be old.
And her hair, look at her hairstyle. Now let's go back to this.
2-strand twist.
We know who they're imitating, if they're imitating, but they're not imitating. Like, these are the people's actual. Look at their features. This is what they look like. They be all over the place. Look at this.
2-strand.
And then you know, so this is something else that, you know, people hasn't considered. If you have a beauty, and I don't know, but this just came to my mind, and I think this is something worth investigating. How do we know that this wasn't used just to practice? Like the wigs weren't just used just to practice hairstyling.
Ooh. They do that in beauty school today.
Exactly. That's what I'm saying. Like, where would you, not everybody's going to let you experiment while you learning on their hair. So where would you learn to do all of this? You create some wigs. And then you do it for real on somebody's hair. They had hairstylists back in the day.
And wigs is somebody else's hair anyway. So who giving them their hair like that?
And I'm using this image for another presentation that I'm doing, because the word for one of the words for hair is the same word for tree. And who would look at trees and see their hair? What stringy trees was hanging in ancient Egypt and in Africa?
But that looked like a whole lot of lookership, sir.
Because you gotta look. How else? We can't do smellership. Oh, it sounded like somebody else came in. Let me add them there, and let me go back. So this looked like a drawing here, but this is an actual person from the same area, and I think this person actually may be from Libya.
I wouldn't be surprised.
Right. And so here's the wig. So it's like, how would you practice? So what white women in the Middle East had hairstyles like this?
All of them got straight hair.
When they had the wigs, they're still imitating the Nubians. I'm sorry, go ahead.
I just said all of them in the Levant, they got straight hair.
Like this is a representation of an earlier person who would fit the description of the ancient Egyptians, especially, you know, after the later mixed period. Look at all these brothers. Beha, no, these are Afar. He looked like the brother that's playing. He was on the Wu-Tang Saga as the RZA. And what's the other? I forgot his name. What's the young man's name? He looked like he was on Good Times, that he was beating up JJ. Oh, here on the right. Look at his skin tone. Look at his eyes. He looked just like one of the standard warriors. And you can still see some of the ancient Egyptians depictions with white hair afros on the walls.
They got the same hairline.
I'm sorry?
The brother at the if you go down the last row, well, yeah, if you go down the last row, right to the right, I think he got the same exact hairline as one of them the depictions of the Egyptians on the walls allegedly. He got the same hairline.
Yeah, that's because they were there. You know, this is why it's silly when you hear people like Hawass, Zahi Hawass, saying that they had nothing to do with Africa. Africans wasn't there. They just came as slaves. These mofos were the army. And do you think that the native Egyptian women and even the foreign women weren't attracted to the soldiers? Do you know what kind of, you know, and I'm gonna be real frank and unscholarly, how much ass you can get as a soldier? You already fit and you fight. It's like, come on, like they expect like they weren't, like when they were there weren't getting it in with people. This is the what the wig was trying to imitate. This looked like Michael Jackson in the 80s, Thriller Mike from Alabama. Got me working day and night. You hear it just looking at him.
Man, he looked like that dude from Captain Phillips.
Look, y'all, people think it's a joke. Like these phenotypes isn't natural across Africa. And look at this wig he got on.
It's glued to his head. Look at the white
wig.
But Assad, didn't Sheikh Anta Diop talked about this when he was sitting down with that black lady, and he talked about the how they depicted themselves?
Yeah, I think when she was translating.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
like look at the variation in the skin tone. So this one's a little lighter red, but this one's still the dark reddish brown. This is exactly how they depicted themselves. So the Egyptian group is related genetically to these folks here and other folks in the areas.
All of them got Jerry curls.
But see, this is what I'm going to emphasize, is the skin. So when they're talking about like dark, it's like, it's not, they saw in themselves it's just like Brother Dejed said earlier, in terms of the sun. You see the sun and them have the same skin. It would make sense, especially if they are the children of Ra. And Ra is their totem.
Exactly. That makes perfect sense. Because even the word rematch, what does it mean? Is it tears of the sun or something like that?
No, the word remech itself just means human being, person, and it comes from a more archaic root, just meaning a male in general, and it just became, so it's just like how we say man, and man can represent a male, but it can also represent man as in human beings. That's how remech was used. And so, but there's a story where they talk about the human beings, the remech is using it as in the larger human sense, comes from the tears of Ra, and the word for tears is remiet in the language. So they're playing, they're using the Rebus principle and wordplay to kind of link the two words. But you know, this is one of the ways in which they did that in terms of integrating, you know. So this is a Ba symbol of, what does it says, Hotep. This is Asar. I can't even see this, so I'm scribbling. I see the bird here and I see it seated, but I can't make this out. I have to look at it further. Well, you can see the Ba heart, or Ib, symbol here. And this is the Ba, human-headed Ba.
Ancient
so
Egyptian
this would be a darker
is
cursor.
really an interesting.
I'm sorry, go ahead. I'm trying to find
it's an interesting civilization, even the language. You know, I bought a book on a beginner for Medu Netter, just for beginners. So I saw the word D, you know, to give, D Nesut. So if they are like giving sacrifices, they will use D Nesut, the king gave. So that word D in my language, it means gave. And usually when you say D in Madinga, you kind of stretch your arm. to say, give me something. So even without reading hieroglyphic, if I see a stretched arm, in my language, the word for that would just be D, to give. So I was like, how did this? Yeah, and the same word, and this the action, the demonstration, the I don't know how they put it. The determinative is an arm that's been stretched out. Just the same action and the same word D. So I'm like, it seems like there was a mother language in Africa, probably, that all language just came out of. You know, not necessarily that our languages are ancient Egyptian, but like there was a mother language that all these languages just came from, and then they modified themselves. So you will be surprised to find even the word ka, a word for grave in my language would be kaburu. That means the house where ka can be, kaburu. So, but we don't know what that ka means there. We use the language, but we don't have etymology for the ka until you read ancient Egyptian. You see, so a lot of things like that. There are words in our languages we can't really trace the etymology. We just use them. But when you read ancient Egyptian, then you find, you say, oh, that is supposed to mean the, like even the sun. We have Tere. The Hausa have Rana for sun. But they didn't know that there was something called Ra that has to do with a deity. But the word for sun in Hausa language, even if you Google it, is Rana.
Yeah.
You see, so there's a lot of stuff like that. So it's easy for an African, as soon as you look at ancient Egyptian culture, their painting, their language, you feel what Diop said, just as a European will look at Greek painting, they look at Greek mythology, and they see themselves in it. So naturally, we see ourselves in the ancient Egyptian culture. Nobody has, even an illiterate African, just look at the painting, he sees himself.
And that's something that is hard for a lot of the detractors here in the United States to really kind of understand the different ways in which people have become interested in ancient Egypt. You know, some of us is just purely academic, and some of us, you know, it's a quest for trying to understand African people and African history because of, you know, us being here in the diaspora. You know, we've been stripped of a lot of, you know, concepts and culture, you know, as because it was illegal to do so here, but some things we were able to keep and some things we were not. But the what they don't understand about the continental Africans is that for them it wasn't a matter of, you know, because it was mentioned in the Bible, or, you know, you may have, I don't even know to what degree Egypt is really referenced in the Quran, if it's referenced as highly as if in the biblical text, but that when they started, like, it's the same thing with Sheikh Anta Diop, it's the same thing with Theophilo Benga, it's the same thing with Jean-Claude Mboli, it's the same thing with Oscar Pafuma, it's the same thing with Abba Bukri Musalam. All of them, when they started looking and studying the language, they started recognizing, just as you did, that when they look for the same word in their language, it is the same word that you find in ancient Egyptian. And this is what started their curiosity. And so, for example, with Jean-Claude Mboli, he said that he was, you know, he was just interested. You know, he came across Theophilo Benga's work and arguments. And, you know, when he started reading that, he just got interested and wanted to know if his language was related to the ancient Egyptian. So, you know, he is of, and I'm putting air quotes, and I know you can't see it, but of mixed heritage. And mixed being that, and I forgot which is which, but one of his, either his mother or father is from the Sango people, and either his mother or father is from the Zande people, the Azande people. So he grew up speaking both languages, Azande or Pazande, as they would say, and Sango. So he started off with the Sango, and I want to say that's his maternal language, the Sango. And because he's already started recognizing some stuff when he was reading Obinga's book from his own language. So this is what inspired him to look into the ancient Egyptian and to learn ancient Egyptian to do the comparative analysis to see if Sango was in fact related to the ancient Egyptian. And it was that being able to verify that he expanded it to his other language, Azande, and then to some other African languages. And this is how he got on the process of rebuilding the Negro Egyptian. It all started with his language. Same thing with Mubabinge Balolo, with Chiluba. So on the continent, it's different because they're looking at the ancient Egyptian stuff and like, wait a minute, they're doing and saying stuff the way that we do and say stuff. So now I'm interested in to see just to what degree that there are similarities between my native language and culture and what I see in ancient Kemet. And so even that name Ramech, I just wanted to pull this up real quick for the person that asked. Like you see, like it's the word Ramech can mean husband, man, or people or person. And you can find reflexes of this in Bantu, like in this one language, Kinadio, Mulume. And in Coptic, is pronounced Rome or Lome or Romi or Lumi. And so in Timbo, Mulume, Chiluba, Mulume, all of these mean man or husband in these languages. And there's other variations depending upon the prefix. And then in Nuer, in the southern part of Sudan, Ram, person, human, individual, Azir, Rime, Rim, child. And there's a reason for that, and I go into that in Eluja Volume 1, because the actual root comes from the human body and then the penis. So it comes from the body and then the limb, penis, and then it becomes a word for like male, and then father, and then being able to produce. And then like even the variant for child, because now when they talk about a Ramech or somebody who is Reme, it's talking about someone who is native born, a son of the soil, a child of the soil. And so there's a whole thing, and it's even related to that concept of like the son of man that you hear in the biblical text. But it doesn't use the same word or language. But so these are just different even in Dogon, they have it. Dime, person. Sumerian, Dam, spouse. Dinka, Ran, man. And there's different series. Even Nomo amongst the Dogon is a variation of the word, because there's a Nomo for fish, and then there's a Nomo for human being. And so just like in the ancient Egyptian, how the word for tears sounds like the word for person, in the Dogon, the word for person sounds just like the word for fish. So in their tradition, we come from fish, the human being, the Nomo. And so these are different variations that you'll find of Ramech or Rome in these African, but it doesn't exist in Berber and doesn't exist in Semitic. So this tells you just the very idea of what it means to be a human and a person. It comes from Inner Africa. But I'll just stop there.
Hey, Asar.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a question to be contrarian real quick?
Go ahead.
Okay. Would it be possible that these people who are in Egypt today, who look like Arabs, right?
Uh-huh.
Could it be possible that they are Egyptian? They've been there for about thousands and thousands of years, as the DNA tells us, but they may be descendants of the Asiatics who came thousands of years ago. Because if we look at Egyptian history, the Asiatics constantly came in and out of there, and even, were colonies of Egypt. So could they just be, Asiatics, but they are Egyptian because they've been there for so long?
Yes, and this is one of the things that we argue all the time. But what they're trying to make the argument is that they are pure, like nothing has changed for them genetically since pre-dynastic times. And so we got to understand that at a certain point, like, when as an analogy, when the founding deadbeat fathers of this country founded this country, when they had in mind all people, and what it means to be American, they meant white Anglo-Saxon males, I guess some females. It just depends how we feel on that day. But they had in mind that's who was an American. And even to a certain degree, when you speak on American values, they don't include people who look like us, right? But
Right.
in the initial stage, that's what was an American to them. But as time progressed, and of course more people immigrate into the country, and now they have to try to have a solidified national consciousness, because now they're going to war with each other in terms of the Civil War. And then of course there's World War I and II, and even before that, the Independence War. So now the dynamics of who's an American is changing with the times, and more is inclusive. So now an American simply just refers to someone who is an American citizen, who was either born here, of course speaks the language and of English, and adheres to the general culture to some degree, or whatnot. But an American can be someone whose biological ancestry within the last 500 years may have originated in places like Sri Lanka, India, Cameroon, Russia, even, et cetera, et cetera.
Right.
It's a melting pot. So in that same vein, it would be the same in ancient Egypt, to where the original Remech were those people who look kind of like those afar, and other type of Nubian folks that is in that area. But because now we've gone through these things, we have bigger enemies, we have a national consciousness now. So Remech includes anybody who's native born, and of course speaks the language and adheres to the quote unquote Egyptian culture.
Because the DNA, they always pull out the mummies and things of that nature, right? And a lot of them are Asiatics, according to their DNA sequences.
Exactly, but a lot of these mummies are from the later periods in Egyptian history where this was expected.
Okay.
So there's no mummy studies about early ancient Egyptians from the South and the Middle Kingdom. None of that stuff. They don't post that information.
They don't never go down there. It's always the Levant, like with those three reconstruct. Well, not the Levant, but what do you
Like
call
the
Upper
Delta,
Egypt? Yeah, the Delta. And they pulled out those three. They did a reconstruction of what the people in the Delta look like, which I believe that's true. That's the Mediterranean. You know what I'm saying? But they never go down to the south.
I wanna share something because this puts into mind exactly. Let me share my screen here. And so we're going to deal with the Fayum mummies, right? And the portraits. So when you see some people try to throw these mummies,
That's
like
Roman.
these images right now, they were erroneously. So I'll read this. Let me make the screen a little bigger. So it says Fayum mummy portraits. Mummy portraits or Fayum mummy portraits, and this is from Wikipedia, are a type of naturalistic painted portrait of wooden boards attached to upper class mummies from Roman Egypt. They belong to the tradition of panel painting, one of the most highly regarded forms of the classical world. The Fayum portraits are the only large body of art from that tradition to have survived. They were formerly and incorrectly called Coptic portraits. So a lot of people on the internet will find these portraits, say these are representations of the original Copts and thus the ancient Egyptians and the like. And that's not the case. There's a where's the area that I want to go to? So the people in the farm, I think. So you can tell that these folks are mixed. And let me see, because it says so explicitly in one part of this. It may be in this area. So it says, under Greco-Roman rule, Egypt hosted several Greek settlements, mostly concentrated in Alexandria. And keep in mind that these portraits were done like right at the edge before the crossover into the BC area and in the 1st century AD that you find these portraits. So this is way after Egypt fell, hundreds of years later. So under Greco-Roman rule, Egypt hosted several Greek settlements, mostly concentrated in Alexandria, but also in a few other cities where Greek settlers lived alongside some 7 to 10 million native Egyptians. And I don't know where they got that estimate from, but check it out. Or possibly a total of 3 to 5 million for all ethnicities, according to estimates. So we just jumped from 10 million native Egyptians to a total of 3 to 5 million of all ethnicities, according to the lower estimates. So that's your range there. So it says Fayum's early Greek inhabitants were soldier veterans and clerics. Remember what I said about the soldiers? Some of y'all probably got brothers and sisters and cousins over there in Vietnam, in Korea, and don't even know it, because your granddaddies and uncles was living their best life, didn't think they was coming back from the war, and so it was the same thing here. So you have Fayum's
War
earliest
babies.
What'd you say?
War babies.
Exactly. And matter of fact, if you go into Africa right now in the Congo, this ain't even soldiers. It's just Chinese workers coming in, having sex with Central African women. They're having children and they leave. So they're stuck there raising these mixed ancestry babies by themselves because they're having these relations with these Congolese and other women in Central Africa. But that's another topic for another day. So Fayum's early Greek inhabitants were
specific.
Well, we'll get back to that. So
Sorry,
Fayum's earliest Greek
go ahead. I wanted
inhabitants.
to give some specific example.
Alrighty. So Fayum's earliest Greek inhabitants were soldier veterans and clerics who were settled by the Ptolemaic kings on reclaimed lands. So native Egyptians also came to settle in Fayum from all over the country, notably the Nile Delta, Upper Egypt, Oxyrhynchus or Rhynchus, and Memphis or Menepher to undertake the labor involved in the land reclamation process, as attested by personal names, local cults, and recovered papyri. It is estimated that as much as 30% of the population of Fayum was Greek during the Ptolemaic period. So let's do the math, right? So let me pull out my phone calculator.
30% of them was Greek, right?
Exactly. So if you're saying that 10 million people were there in well, I think they worded it like 10 million natives. So I don't know how many Greek, but let's just assume that it's 10 million people in the Fayum by itself, right? So 10 million, that's 1, 2, 3, that's 1,000, that's 100,000, that's 1 million, and that's 10 million times 30%. And so, of course, that's just regularly 3 million. And so imagine, so this is, I don't know what time, like what specific date that they are suggesting for here. So out of 10 million people, you just have 3 million people who are Greeks. And so the other estimate was what was it? 3 to 5 million. So if we do, you know, let me clear my calculator. So let's go 5 million, right? Times 30%. So that's 1,500,000 people. Do you know how many people that would be in today's time?
I mean,
that's just assuming. So our range is from 3 million to 1,500 million. So let's just use the upper estimate of that. And you know, that populate, and that's just assuming that they didn't mix with anybody. They just self-contained as Greeks.
that's what they keep on trying to say, that the Egyptians, they contained about 60% of their actual original DNA, while the rest of it is partly Arab and partly sub-Saharan African due to slavery.
It's a bunch of BS, and especially like because that's just Greeks. That's not the Romans, that's not the Persians, that's not the Libyans, that's not just the regular Syrians and Arabs and the Hebrews and other Semites that came in. Remember, Semitic people, they used to import the women just to work the textile industry. That's just regular. This is just during Pharaonic history, especially during the Middle Kingdom. So you expect them to look like this at the later period of time, when you have estimated at least 3 million of one ethnic group and genetic group at one point in time in the late period. And then you have this influx of Asiatics coming in. If you do a DNA test from the later period, you're going to find a lot of Asiatic ancestry. That's not nothing new. We expect that. That's why we have to have the discussion about the culture, because the culture is king. Where are we going to find these concepts amongst the Greeks that wasn't borrowed from the Egyptians? Where are we going to find these major concepts and rituals and ideas and philosophies and kinship terms and references to the sky and water, et cetera, amongst the Berbers, amongst the Arabs and other Semitic speakers, amongst the Canaanites that are just native? Where is that native culture that they would have, all of these immigrants would have came and brought to Egypt and it would have been some continuity there. See, these aren't the representations of pure ancient Egyptians, and that's how they try to pass these portraits off as. And we can tell that they have some African ancestry, just like this sister here look just like Beyonce.
Oh, she sure do.
And Beyonce's family's from where my
Louisiana.
family's from in Louisiana.
Creole.
And we had those Creoles mixed. That's why I have the R1B1 to the second power, whatever my lineage is, coming out of Opelousas, New Orleans. This looked just like Beyonce.
Look at the curls.
Exactly. So, she,
where
in African Americans, she would be considered just a light-skinned sister.
Or mixed.
Right.
So
it's
like
clearly mixed.
People aren't serious when they have these conversations. There's always nuances, always context that has to be considered, which a lot of them do not like to do.
Septimus Severus down there too, with his Syrian wife. And if you look at Caracalla, you saw how you ever saw a bust of Caracalla before?
I don't think so.
If you look at a bust of Caracalla, and he's the son of Septimius Severus, right?
Uh-huh.
His hair is so kinky to where it looked like if you tried to put a pick through that, it'll break.
Indeed. Like people, they all over the place with their claims. And we just
there is this painting.
Go ahead.
I saw have you ever studied the Table of Nations in the tomb of Ramses III? This Table of Nations, there's a little bit of controversy about it. The first person who brought out that Table of Nations was Lipsius from Germany.
I've been in the tomb. As a matter of fact, just not to cut you off, but it's that tomb that started the conversation that brother the Magi, who's still on, but he probably left. So he had a show, and he was having that discussion, about the Ramesses III tomb and some other stuff. Then Wujawu had a show, talking about the Ramesses III tomb and the like. And then that's when Chief X, did his show and was ranting and trying to say stuff was fake, and then it didn't say the rematch. And so this is where a lot of the back and forth. So this very program that we're even having now is just an after show of Brother Wujawu and Sister Emmy Ket talking about the Ramesses III tomb. So I'm sorry, go ahead. Just wanted to bring that context for those who were just joining.
Okay. No, it's interesting because I found most people trying to deny something that is physically there, and the writings are there. It's not Afrocentric scholars who first pointed out that tomb. It was a European. It was Lipsius from Germany. He pointed that out and said, look, this is what it is. Then Diop reproduced it. So now they are saying that the first argument they are having was that, first of all, the artist made a mistake. I said, how did you know that? You went into the artist's head and know that he made a mistake? Then we should assume they made a mistake on everything else. You see?
Yeah,
then the second thing they said that it was not Ramesh that was written. But even the dress code, you see that there are 3 stripes on one order and there are 2 stripes on the other. It wasn't a mistake, it was deliberately done.
Exactly. And that was part of the if you catch, go on with Jawu's channel, one of the I don't know if he's an official pseudo killer member or whatnot, but Brother Aku, when I woke up, so they had this conversation in the middle of the night for us. And so I woke up just in the middle of the night and had my computer on, and then I saw the notice when that the show was live. So, you know, but so when I came on, Aku was sitting here trying to argue and deny that this represented the Remetch and that this was a mistake. I'm like, I've been to the tomb. First of all, there's different variations of the Remetch throughout the entire tomb. But I'm like, in this situation, you cannot make an argument that is a mistake because the artist carved them and drew them 4 times in the tomb. It's not one. Like when you see Lipsis drawing, he just reduces the 16 figures into 4 because it's 4 sets of 4 when you get into the tomb. Matter of fact, I will show you my photo from the last time that I went to Egypt for this. And, you know, and this is one of those tombs that they don't allow you to take photos. So I don't have a really good photo because, you know.
Really?
Yeah. Some tombs, they don't want you taking photos because, of course, that's all the good stuff. So what they do is they'll take photos and then try to sell you the photos from the tomb. So that's exactly what they're doing. It's just a tourist thing. Right, so this is from that same tomb, Ramesses III, and so here's the photo of the Remetch, and so you see the wretch or the Remetch here, and the seated man and seated woman, and so it's actually 4. The 4th person is over here, but it's 4 images of each. And so it's a wall. You can't really see it. So you see this glare here. That's because it's a glass that is separating the actual wall from where you're standing. So right here is this little beam. It's a corner, and so now it's about to turn on the right here on the corner. Then you get to see some other so-called table of nations. This really should be the table of directions, but that's another story. But so this is the Remetch, and matter of fact, you see the word Remetch written right here as well. So what you see spelled out right here, it is written out in clustered together right here, Remetch, right over them now. So as you can see, you know, the dress and the hairstyle, like everything is accurate. So anybody trying to say that it's Photoshop and doesn't exist, they've never been to the tomb. They ain't been to Egypt. It exists. I was there. Here's my photo.
Those are Nubians, Asar. Those aren't the Egyptians. Those are Nubians.
You know. And it's like,
but what if the writing said they are Egyptian? Then you have to say no.
Look, that was a mistake. So this is the point. They made 4 mistakes. 1, 2, 3 in the 4th person, right? Wherever actually it's this way. So the 4th person is this way, right?
So the same thing happened for Mayhepri. Mayhepri, the prince whose body was found in the Valley of the King, who has the most perfect preserved book of resurrection. I call it book of resurrection. They call it book of the dead. So he was buried, but his painting in the afterlife, his portrait was put in jet black instead of the red. And the writing there said he was a prince. That's all. And then he was something, the lion of the battlefield. But the Egyptologists have to put in bracket, it said of a Nubian origin. And the text doesn't say that. His body is found in the valley. Do you bury a Nubian in the valley of the king? He is not citizen, he's not Egyptian, nothing. You bury him in the valley of the king. Mayhepri, you can Google him and you see him in his jet black skin with the book of the with the afterlife portrait. And the text says He is a prince and a lion of the battlefield. Why do you have to put it in brackets, Nubia?
Mm-hmm.
I don't really get it. In America today, if you present Obama, you present all the American citizens. Are you now going to say those whites are the only Americans, or certain people are American, the Chinese Americans are not Americans, or just because the former presidents were light skinned, so Obama is not a president? I don't get it. It's to find Middle Eastern people in Egypt. It's not an issue for us. That is natural. You have to find them there. You see, they were coming since pre-dynastic. They were even coming, but they are not the owner of the culture and the civilization because it's not found in their credo. You don't find that civilization in their credo. You don't find the social institution that built that civilization. You don't find it in Arabia. You don't find it in Greece. You see, so there are migrants that came to meet people on the ground who developed that civilization. Why did the king come from the south? Why did Nama come from the south, not the north?
Indeed. I mean, your guess is as good as mine. But, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I think time will come, we will get past this. That's why for me, really, our institutions will be built, because mind you, one of the people that will keep fighting will be our own people. Because Diop said that in one of his last conference in Niamey, he said he has been on the battlefield to push African history. He said the greatest resistance he has met are African people. He said the bigger resistance he has met, when he meet Europeans and Arabs, he knocked them off. They have no argument. They just shut up. He said, but those he has met, they don't have the knowledge. They don't even understand it, but they are willing to fight you. He said, are black people. That's what Diop said. He said that's the only part he regrets in his struggle. That only his own people have been fighting him. And sometimes they don't even know the subject. The Europeans who know the subject, they don't talk because they know the truth. But the African don't know the subject, but he wants to argue because he feels you are an African, he can challenge you.
Exactly. And it's this is something that we mentioned earlier in the program, that even with the Arabized Russian bots, like it's going to be rare that you find a scholar who's going to just come out and boldly make these racist claims. It's these non-professional, non-studied civilians, who have personal political reasons, who will make these claims and try to make these arguments under fake accounts on the internet. But the academics, they know better, because they would have to prove this stuff, and they know that these African scholars, even though they don't have the money to do the excavations, they have what the excavators don't have, and that's the culture language. And once we start whipping that out and showing the origins of these concepts, they don't want that smoke. So that's why they try to avoid any public, especially recorded, conversations between African scholars regarding ancient Egypt and the standard academia. But go ahead.
I even kind of I don't want to take it too far back, but even with you, another thing with you bringing up that, the people in the North, they would have destroyed the antiquities a long time ago, right? Because even in the ancient times, if you look up what happened to the Sphinx's nose, the Smithsonian came out and said that the reason why the Sphinx's nose looked like that is because, and this is after the Arab invasion of Egypt, there was a Islamic cleric, I can't pronounce his name, but he saw a bunch of Egyptians still worshiping it, and he actually blew up the Sphinx's nose, but he couldn't destroy it all. So, you know,
I haven't really studied too much on the nose of the Sphinx and who blew it up. I've never really been interested in it. And I'm pretty sure that there's some others who can probably better answer that than I, but you know, I haven't really been interested in that. For
who was supposed to have blew it up? I'm sorry, who did you just say blew it up?
it was. You can find this on the Smithsonian's website about the Sphinx's nose. It was a cleric who did that, Islamic cleric. This is after the Arab invasion of Egypt.
Oh yeah, I do have.
Anthony Browder did it.
I do have some information on that about an Arab dude, but blowing it up might. Well, we got to remember at the time that they could walk up to the nose of the Sphinx because it was covered in sand.
Exactly.
And so some propose that it might not have even been explosives. It might have just been physical labor of banging it away. But I do hear exactly what you said before about it being not Napoleon, but some Arabs.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Smithsonian
The only
talked
thing I know
about that.
about it, I think it was Anthony Browder.
Go ahead.
Sorry. Yeah, Anthony Browder in his book, Nile Valley Contribution, to civilization, he actually said he didn't really give a primary source, but he said there are speculation that Napoleon might have done it, and there is no direct evidence. But we know when Napoleon takes over places, he defaced some of the monument. It's a kind of a psychological war tactic that he had with his army. They did it when they captured some part of Europe because he was not a Christian. So wherever they captured the Jesus portrait and monument, they kind of defaced, cut off the noses, chopped the face off of those monuments. Because in ancient time, that's a warfare. It's part of destroying those kind of things. Is a way of showing that you have destroyed their legacy. So he said that is an assumption that he might have blown up the nose. Then Ivar van Santima, he said that he actually saw the nose in a private museum in somewhere in Europe. He and Sheikh and the deal that they saw the nose, they met the person in a private museum. Is actually a what quote unquote African nose. And these people said, no, they can't restore it. And Diop and Van Santima pursued these people, told the Egyptian to go get it. The Egyptian said, no, they are not going after it because the Egyptians were not interested in restoring it. So that's all I know about it.
Interesting. And so there are photographs from the 1600s from explorers who went to Africa and the nose was still on the Sphinx. And so we can find, I'm sorry, they have photographs with the nose still on it, and then they have photographs with the nose off of it before Napoleon reaches Egypt. And so that let us know Napoleon didn't do it because we can find, I think, some pictures from the 1700s with the nose off before the Battle of the Nile or what have you.
It's my latest meme. I need to put the source of that. I need to put this on a t-shirt. I don't think people would get it unless you're a Wu-Tang fan. Just wanted to share that. But yeah, that would make sense. So the earlier conversation was simply, we were talking about how, Arabs don't respect history and people in their culture and heritage. And, everywhere they go, they try to destroy the memory, of the people. And because, in the text, anything before Muhammad is allegedly the basically equivalent to the Dark Ages. and light came with Muhammad. And so, but it just shows you how weak the doctrine is, because if people were to put it side by side with the indigenous doctrines, they're scared that the people would choose the indigenous doctrines and not Islam. And so they in order to secure their position, they have to be violent with people's history and culture. And this is why, they're so resistant to it. And we even see it with the backlash that we get, because they're trying to claim that we're trying to steal their culture. Like I replied to one of the Russian bots, the Arabized Russian bots. I'm like, how are you going to accuse us of stealing your culture when the Arabs stole y'all, replaced your language, stole your land, and now control who has access to the monuments and things, and then will tell you not to practice your if you are an indigenous representative of the Egyptians, you can't even practice your own religion and culture in Egypt. So who's stealing what? Who stole what? Like they be on some BS. And that's why, I come the way that I do, like showing them, no, that's actually our culture that made its way up into Egypt. And so I'm putting a challenge out there, and I'm arguing that the ancient Egyptians stole African culture. And I'm coming from that perspective that I mentioned earlier. For those who didn't catch it, you'll have to get a recap. But we've been on for 3 hours and 32 minutes. And so I'm just going to give everyone, some closing words. So I'm going to start off. I don't know if Brother Magi is still there. If he has any closing words, and, share your channel and social media.
I'll have to go last because I'm in a place where I can't use my phone right now.
I see. All right. The Jed and Monk.
Okay, first of all, I just want to say
a break from church.
Yeah. I creeped out the bathroom window. I left my footprint in the soap dish. But yeah, I just want to say I enjoyed the conversation and being in on it, listening to it. Thank you for having me. I don't do a lot of social media and stuff like that. So I don't have anything to plug really, but I will tell you, if you want to learn the meta nature and stop making all these crazy mistakes and learn how to read the stuff, you can come to Moot Ricchetti School, and you might even have me for a tutor. So from the sounds of things, there's some folks that could use that kind of instruction. But I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna dip out. I appreciate you, Brother Asar, for always love when we have conversations. So thank you so much. Yeah.
Appreciate you, Brother Lionel.
Okay, I really enjoyed the build, and let me ask you a question, Asar.
Okay.
Is your other Facebook your real name? Because I try to type in Asar Imhotep and it don't come up, but then I saw another one that had your real name on it, and I sent it to that one. Is that one you as well?
If it's the Harold Johnson page, then yes.
Okay, that's the one I sent it to.
All right, no problem.
And I just really enjoy being on here. I'm pretty sure that you're gonna get some backlash from my people. So just get ready for that one.
Indeed. All right, and Brother Sekou. Brother Sekou, you there?
All right. I don't know, Sekou there.
Sorry, I was.
But oh, there you go. Go ahead.
We'll let Magi go because I know he.
No, that's cool. He could go ahead. I still got a few moments. Thank you. Sorry. Go ahead.
No problem. All right, Brother Sekou. Any final words? And
yeah, I just
yeah, I just want to thank you, for this program, and I'm learning a lot. And I don't my Facebook page. I usually title Afro Consciousness, so I promote Afrocentric classic books. Starting from Martin Delaney, Diop, and all these people, promote them because most of our people back home don't have access to some of these materials. So I promote these books, and then try to open a YouTube channel to kind of promote some of these books, do book reviews so people can buy them. And then basically that's it. Then we are learning from some of you, Asa, and I really appreciate your work. And I believe the revolution will succeed when each and every one of us carry the torch. And that's what you're doing. Thank you.
I appreciate it. Brother Magi?
Oh, yeah, I can't speak much, but just thanks for doing the show. I know you got up real early to pull it off, and I appreciated it. We're going to deal with the non-believers no matter what race they are, whether they're, you know what I mean, the Russianized bots are just some sleep brothers who want to discredit us. And so that's part of the struggle. But I just want to thank you for putting on and holding on the show, and holler next time.
Indeed. And I want to thank again personally each and every one of you who have joined the panel and extended the discussion, continuing from Brother Ujawu and Sister Imiket's program on the Sesh Metanetra channel. And all of you who was up with us in the wee hours of the morning and continue to rock with us until even to now. And all the latecomers, peace and blessings to each and every one of you. Thank you for continued support of the channel. And we'll be having some interviews and some conversation soon on the channel. So please make sure that you subscribe if you have not, and just keep your ears to the streets, and we'll let you know what is going on. So it's a Sunday. Y'all enjoy your day. Peace to Sister LaDosha. Want to say hi to her and Brother Sean before we go, Mr. K and Obi-Wan and Tony. He's always on the opposite side of history, but it's all to the good. So thank each and every one of you for joining the conversation. Y'all enjoy the rest of your Sunday. It's going to be jam-packed. I know a lot of folks are having shows later on today, so if you ain't doing nothing, check out Kofi Pasai TV. I think Sister Dr. Ma'at has a show today. I know the Seshew is going to have another show later on today addressing some things and the like. So until next time, y'all be blessed. All right, peace.